Hello, can you hear me? I'm not able to hear any of the meeting.
Andrew, can you hear us now?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out to us. So we had a motion to renew the VFW first and third class license. We just want to make sure that Rocket's able to come over and vote.
Hey everyone, I can hear you. I was also having trouble hearing.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. So Rocket, we have a motion to approve the VFW first and third class license. So I'll just do it again. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, opposed? None. All right, so we've got Rocket.
Can you, I guess you have to list it. I was recusing myself. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. All right, so we come to the next batch, DEF. Happy to have a discussion or take a motion on those.
I'll make a motion
Okay, thank you, Mary.
I move to renew the liquor license of Public House at Quechee Gorge LLC, doing business as the Public House at Quechee Gorge, 5813 Woodstock Road, Quechee, Vermont, 05059, first and third, as well as outside consumption. And also the renewal of Perry Hospitality Group of Vermont, doing business as the Quechee Inn at Marshland Farms, Quechee Main Street, Quechee, Vermont, 05059, first, third, and outside consumption, as well as the renewal of Collaborative Stoke Incorporated, doing business as Trail Break Tap and Tap Tacos, 129 South Main Street, White River Junction, Vermont, 05001, first, third, and outside consumption.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Ali will second. Any discussion? Fanny?
Yeah. Why are we seeing the Quechee Club march coming back up again? I'm not quite sure I understand why that's back on here.
Quechee Inn.
I'm sorry. Oh, that's Quechee Inn's Marshland Farm.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Different thing. Okay, never mind.
Okay,
No, my apologies.
no problem. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And Rocket? Just to make
Aye,
sure.
sorry, I forgot to unmute
Aye.
myself.
No, don't worry about it. We got a couple more, so you can get ready. All right, so now we come to G. This is Big Fatty's Barbecue for first, second, third, and outside consumption. Ellie?
Mr. Chair, I move that we renew the liquor license of Maple Street Catering LLC, doing business as Big Fatty's BBQ, 186 South Main Street, White River Junction, Vermont, 05001, first, second, third, and outside consumption.
I second the motion.
Mary seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So that one will pass. All right, H, I believe we will also take separately. That's just a first class license. That's the China Moon Buffet. Happy to have discussion or to accept a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we renew the liquor license for first class for Hua Tang Restaurant, doing business as Vermont China Moon Buffet, 96 Sixth Avenue, White River Junction, Vermont, 05001.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second the motion.
Mary will second. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Rocket. Okay, so we've approved that. The next one is would be for piecemeal pies. That's a first and outside consumption license. Happy to take a motion.
I'll move, Mr. Chair, to renew the license, the liquor license of Piecemeal LLC, doing business as Piecemeal Pies, 5 South Main Street, White River Junction, Vermont, 05001, first and outside consumption.
Thank you, Mary. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ali will second. Discussion. Laney?
Yeah, piecemeal pies outside consumption permit is basically going to have to take place on the sidewalk. And that is owned by the town. So do we have to give them permission to use the sidewalk for this function? Because the street is going to be closed. Have they applied to the town to use the sidewalk for
I think this is similar, I think, with the Tucker box that we met on at the last meeting, right? The street itself.
I know, and I
will
didn't
not be
even-
open for dining, but I believe the sidewalk will.
I didn't even think about that at that time.
Yeah.
But the fact that, and the Tucker box would be a concern as well, because it is the sidewalks are going to be torn up and replaced. So I'm just wondering about, because that is the town property, whether they actually, merchants need permission from the town in order to serve alcohol or use that space for their facility.
This was probably a question for a few days because I'm gonna say we've done this for quite a while, allowed people to use sidewalk spaces. And you did okay Tucker box with the caveat that they would understand that there's times of the season that it would be inappropriate for them to have their tables out. If we wanted to look into, because that is technically our property and what we would need to do, that's going to take a little bit of research and time, probably between Public Works, the clerk's office, and the Department of Liquor Control.
I just concerned a little bit when it comes to outside consumption permits on town property in terms of liability to the town. If, even though the alcohol is being served by the establishment, if the person walks away from there inebriated and steps into traffic or gets hurt on the sidewalk because they trip and fall on a broken piece of sidewalk, what is the liability of the town for this? I know you can't give the answer right now, and I don't expect you to give the answer right now, but if it's something you could research, I think it's beneficial.
I would let you know that someone who is inebriated, who trips and falls on the sidewalk would likely, that situation would be the same no matter where they had consumed alcohol. And that would definitely be something that our insurance company would be dealing with if they brought forth litigation with us. So that wouldn't matter where they consumed or why they tripped and fall. If it was at a restaurant that was serving alcohol outside on what would necessarily be our sidewalk versus someone who was inebriated at a different place.
The only caveat there is that we allowed it to take place on town property. Whereas if they consumed alcohol on property that was their own, say Big Fatties or something, all right, it's a total different situation than if it's on town property. I just like you to research that if we could a little bit and come back to the board with that.
I think it's a good question. My guess is that if the state allows outside consumption permits, they certainly would limit their own liability for anyone who was injured tripping on the sidewalk or something like that. I mean, I think it's a good question. I'm sure we can get an answer pretty quickly. I think because we approved the Tucker box and other ones last meeting, I would be inclined to approve this one, especially because I believe all liquor licenses expire at the end of April. So we wouldn't have a chance to bring this up at the next meeting. So I'd recommend we move forward, but certainly get an answer from Tracy for you, Manny.
I have no problem moving this license. I just want to make sure that we are covered as far as town liabilities.
Absolutely. So I will take a motion.
I have a motion and a second on the floor, sir.
Oh, we already did.
We were in discussion.
All right. Any discussion other than that? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Looks like that one passed. And then finally, we have the last two, both of which are second class licenses. And I'm happy to have a discussion or entertain a motion on these.
Mr. Chair, I move that we renew the liquor licenses for Monshire Services LLC, doing business as Bob's Service Station, 4 Ballardvale Drive, Hartford, Vermont, 05001, second class, as well as Jake's Quechee Market, 7161, Woodstock Road, Quechee, Vermont, 05059, second class.
I'll second that, sir.
Lenny will second. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right.
One more question, sir, since we're
Yes.
on liquor control. Tracy, am I correct in my understanding that after we pass these as a local liquor control, they go to Montpelier to be approved?
They go to the Division of Liquor Control to be final approval.
And do we get something back to us if they're not approved at that level?
Yes.
Okay, so do you know what the time frame is? I'm just concerned about when we approved Quechee Lakes for Murphy Farm, if that has passed the review process at the state or not?
I wouldn't know. I'd have to specifically reach out to the clerk, who is our connection with the Division of Liquor Control, and have her do that work in terms of where someone is in the process. And I don't know if they necessarily would tell us unless they were at a certain stage in their evaluation. So they might say, we have it and we're looking at it, or it's been approved, but they might not give us details.
Just be a good educational tool for us as a local liquor control going forward to know what happens for approving things. So it
Yeah.
might be worth checking into. If you could jot that down and check with our assistant clerk, please,
On any denials.
on any denials, yes.
Okay, because approvals, you're gonna get a giant
Yes,
pile.
on any denials, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Lanny. All right, well, I'm going to close that portion of the local liquor control board, and we will reopen as the Hartford Select Board. So our first order of business is the order of the agenda. I noticed that our friend and new treasurer, Joe Major, is here. It might be considerate if we moved him up, I would say, after select board comments and announcements, so that he doesn't have to stay here till 8:30. Joe appears to be praying. So I'm happy to do that. I don't know that we need a motion. Are people generally in agreement with doing that?
Yeah.
Yes.
And the other question, I guess, is should the line of credit application also be moved up?
You don't have to do that.
Don't
if
have to.
you
So
want
we'll just move Joe's appointment up after select board comments and announcements.
I don't know. I think we ought to make him sweat a little bit. But
It's a little payback for the playoffs and the Buffalo Bills.
Okay. Yes, I'm in agreement.
All right, so we'll make that change. So our next item is public comment. We'll start with anyone in the room. If anyone wants to speak to us, please identify yourself and the town of your residence, address the select board as a whole, and refrain from personal attacks. Anyone in the audience? No? Anyone online? Yep.
Cedar, could you bring Mike over, please? Yes. Or unmute him.
And we told her about it.
Hey, Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, Mike.
Mike Morris, Hartford, Vermont. Thank you very much. Calling up to ask about, I'm seeing changes in times that our public offices are open.
Mhm.
And being living here most all my life, I mean, the municipal building, now the town hall, has always been open 8 to 5. And now it's on limited hours. Can somebody explain why we're doing this? We approved a full plus budget this March, and I don't understand why we're cutting back on hours.
Sure, thank you, Mike. I don't know, Tracy, if you have any thoughts or if that's a department head decision for various
Yeah,
areas.
well, let's first off remember that we approved a fiscal year 23 budget, which doesn't even start until July 1st. So we're still in fiscal year 22. And we, like everybody else, have staff who have needed to take additional time off for either health or personal reasons. And we're accommodating that as much as we can. And being cognizant of people who have other things going on in their lives where they need to take time off, rather than asking other staff to cover in overtime or bringing in additional temporary service. We have cut back, I believe, a total of an hour and a half, 3 times a week at my office, and finance, because of their low staffing, is open to the public from 9 to 3. They are doing additional work outside of those hours, but that allows them to focus on their work. And I do have a couple of cases where during the spring, we did have to cut back in other departments to accommodate other people's health concerns. Notably, last summer, even, we had some days where the clerk's office was dark due to health issues.
Okay, is this something that's likely to go back to an 8 to 5 schedule at some point, either in the new fiscal year or as circumstances permit for health?
As circumstances permit, we're also trying to accommodate for the first time in a few times, people are able to take some time off. And so if people can take time off, we're trying to accommodate those vacations. So I don't want to say necessarily that summer is going to be full bore here. People are actually able to vacation and take their time, which does go away if they don't take it. So we encourage people to take their vacation, and as resources permit, we will stay open as much as we can and as often as we can.
Okay.
Oh, am I still on?
Yes, you're still on, Mike. You have an additional
well,
comment?
Tracy said that was basically still on last year's budget. Well, last year's budget was set for 40-hour work weeks for everybody too. And I didn't know we were short-staffed within the town hall building. As far as I know, short-staffed. I know we are in public works and police and everything else. Like I said, this is the town's house. It's been open 8 to 5 for the last 100 years. I don't know. I'm really disturbed by this. I mean, I think people rely on that being open 8 to 5, and we're not asking for overtime. That's not overtime. It's 40 hours a week. So I'm not quite absorbing this. It seems like it says COVID, and I understood we had different things going on, but we're not wearing masks anymore. We're not worried about that. Some people aren't. I still am, but I'm quite disappointed that this is happening. I mean, I've spur of the moment going right down to the office to do something, the town hall. I got to pay attention to the times because they're shortened now in places. I just don't think it's appropriate or fair to the taxpayers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. Kim and then Lanny.
Just to clarify, is the actual building closed? I thought it was just your office. No, so the building is not, the building is open until 5.
You're getting feedback because their TV is on.
Oh, Mike, if you can mute for a
Mike,
second.
Mike, mute yourself, please.
So the building is accessible, and it's just that there are some offices that are closing early. And I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on this. I would argue that if the finance director or the town clerk or the town manager were only in their office 8 to 5, that would be 40 hours a week. But clearly they're in meetings and evenings, and in, they're doing things after 5 o'clock on many nights. So that would contribute to their salary figure as well.
Thanks, Kim. Lanny.
Tracy, knowing that we have generally more than 2 people in any one office, is there any way we could stagger so that we could have one person here at 8 and have them leave early, and the other person stay late until 5 o'clock, and that way we could have those full hours of 8 to 5 open? That way we could have, and I understand that there are going to times when that doesn't happen because people are on vacation, but if we do have 2 people in the office, it would make sense to maintain as much time as the town hall is open to be able to have it staffed from that time period.
Yeah, we're doing that as the best that we can in terms of that staggering times, having people come in and out early or late. And this is where we've all landed on for now.
And we're still not able to go from 8 to 5 then.
No, and finance is taking a little bit of time because they do have such a backlog of work right now to close their window to the public, but there's always an option for someone to get their payment taken 8 to 5. So we do actually have staff that are taking payments at other windows, and those signages is up if they do need to. Finance does step back from the public portal to get their work completed.
So do we still have people working from home? Is that why we can't have the office?
No,
open, or-
this is related to other issues. And again, we're kind of moving into this like personnel thing. So I know that it sounds like I'm not being specific. That's because I am respecting people's personal lives.
But do we not? So everyone was working remotely, now that the COVID aspect is done, is now back, or is that?
No, we have a remote work policy as well.
We still have people working remotely?
Yes.
Okay. I think at some point we should have a discussion on that. But
That is something that we should probably discuss in executive session because I manage staff.
Okay, thanks, Lanny. Any other public comment?
No other hands up.
Okay, so we will move on. Select board comments and announcements. Anyone have anything? I'll start with Kim and work our way down.
You want to start with Rocket? He's got his hand up.
Oh, Rocket, if you got your hand up, yep, let's start with you.
I can wait.
Okay. All right, well, we'll wait on Rocket.
I don't want to cut anyone. I'm happy to wait my turn. I just wanted to raise my
Do you have
hand.
any select board announcements or comments you'd like to share?
Yeah, I guess now that I'm here, sure. Well, firstly, I just wanted to apologize to everyone that I couldn't be there in person. I am fine and healthy, but I was a close contact of a COVID positive, so I just wanted to be abundantly cautious and be mindful of everyone else's health, even though I do feel fine. I miss you guys, and I'm sorry I can't be there. I did have a couple comments, some things that some projects that I've been thinking about that I'm inspired by, and I just wanted to invite the public, as well as, of course, any select board members or anyone in the room or on the Zoom to maybe start engaging a conversation about. First is I've heard a lot of comments actually from different corners of town about a downtown block party at some point. And so this is maybe a question that would be in Tracy's field in terms of like shutting down the streets and actually doing sort of like a summertime thing like that. Sounds pretty awesome to me. And I think that would be something worthy of pursuing. And then the other thing that's really hot on my mind that I wanted to sort of talk about tonight was murals. I've noticed on my walks around downtown White River that there are a lot of blank wall space. And I just thought Rutland, Vermont, I don't know if any of you spent much time there. They've done a really wonderful job of putting up different murals. And I thought that would be such an interesting, wonderful way to bring a little color to this community. So those are on my mind. They're just sort of out on the horizon, and I wanted to just float them this way and yeah, just let that be known. And the last comment, actually sort of want to respond to Lanny about the licensing about Tucker Box and piecemeal pies. So I appreciate the concern. And I think it's a really great thing that we need to be mindful of is the liability. But I would also want to really make sure that we emphasize our support, certainly my support as a select board member of those businesses downtown, and trying to work towards any solutions that we can so that they're not being encumbered by red tape. And so whatever that needs to be, whether it's, for us to help make that happen, I want to just sort of voice my support of that and just make sure businesses can do business downtown. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rocket. We appreciate it. Kim, what's up?
Yeah, I don't have my notes with me, but one thing I wanted to also just kind of throw out was heard some comments from committees that the line of communication between committees and board isn't always clear. We have our liaison, our commission reports, which I think is great, but I'd love us to consider sort of a rotating calendar of one 10-minute slot per month that we might invite the chairs of each various committee, commission to just kind of give a little like, here's what we're working on, this is what we need if we need anything, and just to sort of open up those lines of communication. I've heard that it kind of sometimes feels a little isolated between groups, and and it's also been pointed out that like sort of, these are committees kind of serving at the pleasure of the select board, but there isn't a real dialogue. So, and if there, another version of that could include, alternating months or something, same with all department head, like we're going to hear from the assessor tonight. We're going to hear from the the finance department next month. So maybe sprinkled in between those are also if there are any departments we're not hearing from, just to kind of keep the lines of communication in literally like a 10-minute segment. I would recommend that. Wanted to just see how board felt about it.
Jelly.
I'm very in support of that. Don't have much to add beyond just I've heard similar things from some committees, and even just especially for newer board members, and to keep those lines of communication, but then also just even, we have so many committees, which is fantastic. And that, folks in the public also will have an opportunity to ask committees questions, because some folks even who want to attend committee meetings just because they're curious can't necessarily make the meeting. So just other opportunities to have those touch points, I think is really great.
So I also think that would be a good idea. It seems like something we could just schedule in. It would be nice to hear, love the commission reports we all do. They're very informative, but, it would be nice also to see the chair so we could, ask questions, ask for their feedback on stuff. So I do think that would be a good idea, and would bring out more information about, the workings of the town and the committee. So thank you, Kim. Dan or nothing? Mary?
Yeah, and in the spirit of communication between the Hartford Conservation Commission and myself and all of you. I just wanted to notify you that there is an on-site public meeting about the proposed timber harvest in the Hurricane Town Forest on Thursday, May 5th, from 5:30 to 7:30. For the first hour or so, the Windsor County Forester, who prepared the HTF Resource Assessment and Management Plan, will explain the reasons for and what will happen during the proposed timber harvest. Then we will receive public questions and comments. And Tom also recommended or asked me to relate to you that in a late May, they're hoping to present a summary of public outreach and recommendations pending select board approval for a patch cut. And so this should be something that you will receive an invitation probably sometime late this week. So.
Thank you, Mary. Ally, any comments?
Nope, I'm all set.
Lanny, any comments?
Yes, sir. So want to revisit under select board side, the closing of, well, not closing, but the allowance of businesses to use sidewalks for business. One thing that I just happen to think of is that we have to bear in mind, I don't know whether we are or not, if we are still in compliance with American with Disabilities Act when we shut down sidewalks, because we got to be able to allow people with disabilities and wheelchairs and scooters to get by. And it's a concern that that's a definite thing that could come back and be very negative for the town if we are not in compliance with that. So we got to look into that, especially with the sidewalks, the only means to travel because the road's going to be shut down. And then the other thing that I was wondering is that I saw, and I contacted Tracy about this, that Jeremy Delisle is going to, or I'm sorry, Assistant Public Works Director is going to be filling in for a temporary basis on a trial basis for our Public Works Director position on a temporary basis. And the question I had, because the ad had been pulled for the Department of Public Works Director, is while it was up, did we receive any applications for that position?
So none of this has been formally decided. We're in the middle of personnel discussions, so I can't speak to any of this actually right now.
You have it listed in your manager's report. In the town manager's report, you have it listed that.
In terms of other resumes,
No, you have it listed as Jeremy Delisle is going to be. So my question is, did we receive any, well, the position was listed, did we receive any resumes?
Yes.
We did.
Yes.
Okay. Right. And the question would be, did those people meet qualifications?
I'm really uncomfortable that we're in select board comments and we're having conversations about hiring right now. I'm gonna refrain from speaking more until I can make sure that I am not inadvertently misspeaking out of turn when it comes to hiring.
I just want a point of clarification. How I interpreted that was interim public works director does not mean the new public works director. It just
I
means
understand.
acting until, okay,
Yes.
sorry, I was.
Yes, I never said that we
Okay.
had promoted him to the public works director.
Okay,
The reason that I asked the question is because we just went through and we're currently ongoing a search for a police chief. And I want to make sure that our hiring, that the towns, I'm not sure quite how to word this, but I want to make sure that we are not overlooking candidates that present themselves for the positions that are open within the town. That's,
Thank you,
I
Lanny.
sort of feel like that's a fair point. I just wanted to chime in. I was a little confused about that too, but I understand Tracy's point about maybe this is not the right time to have that conversation, but I was a little bit confused about that, but that's all.
we had the ad up and then we pulled the ad and we have the position. So I'm just a little confused about the whole way that process is going about. And while I understand that it's the town manager's purview for personnel, this seems a little bit,
Well, we don't know, was the ad pulled because they had sufficient qualified candidates? I mean, they still have to go through an entire hiring process, but I mean,
Right,
it
but
doesn't seem like we should get too much into the weeds of the personnel decision.
my only question was whether we had people apply. So,
Okay. It sounds like people did apply. So, all right, I don't have any comments or announcements. Our next item of business is to confirm the appointment of Joseph Major as treasurer. We met on April 7th and appointed Joe as treasurer. It looks like the document we signed to actually making that official was inadvertently signed by a member who recused themselves. So we're just going to do it again to make sure that everybody is comfortable. We've done this already. I don't know, Joe, if you want to say anything or if anyone has discussion or if we just want to go right ahead. There is a recommended motion.
No, I have nothing.
Thank you, Joe. Kim?
Mr. Chair, I move that the select board appoint in accordance with the authorities granted by 24 BSA 963 Joseph Major as the town treasurer effective April 20, 2022 through 2023 voting day.
I'll second.
A second from Ally. Any discussion?
so I have a question about why I need to remove myself from this conversation because I wasn't there to start with. I mean, this is a whole new conversation and I can choose to vote for Joe if I so choose to. I mean, this is a totally another,
So where we're coming from this is we spoke to the bank, and because we're confirming the vote, it would be cleanest if you are confirming the votes that you had on that Thursday because the paper was missigned. So we're going to be going off of the notes on the 7th and that there was discussion on the 7th.
so I'm supposed to abstain from this vote? Is that what they're saying?
That was suggested to me, is that you can abstain because you were absent from the discussion on the 7th.
So I gather I should probably abstain too, right?
I think Rocket should also abstain.
Okay.
If either of you want to say any words that
No,
whether you
I fully support
go
Joe,
right ahead.
so I fully
Okay.
support Joe. I don't know why I shouldn't be able to vote for it.
I say go Joe, but I will happily abstain.
All right, I think since the bank wants us to do that and they are an integral partner here with the town and the treasurer, I would recommend that Rocket and Lanny just abstain from this one and Dan also abstain. And we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so we've got approval of the confirmation of Joe Major as treasurer. Thank you, Joe.
Good job.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, after that.
We can get paid now.
Yes, that is important. All right, so our next item, I'm actually going to close this portion of the Hartford Select Board meeting, and I'm going to open a public hearing regarding Wentworth Community Housing 2 VCDP grant closeout.
Can you bring Lori Hirschfield over as a presenter, please? Thank you.
So we're going to hear from Lori,
It looks like she popped off.
Supposed to be an attendees.
Oh, there we go.
and I believe that a public or an open hearing, public hearing is required when these types of grants are closed out. So that's what we're going to do.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great, because when I joined last time, I could hear you. I could not hear any of you, so I had to rejoin. Okay, great. Thank you. So I just want to let you know a little bit about the background here, and also that we are joined as well by Andrew Winter, who is the Executive Director of Twin Pines Housing Trust, and Sue Cobb, who is the project manager for this housing development project. Just a little bit of background. In 2020, the town was awarded $247,000 and $200 of Vermont Community Development Block Grant funds to accommodate the development of this project. That came to the town, has to come through the town to Development Corporation, which was Twin Pines, in order for the project to receive the money. That project also received a little under $7 million of other funding resources in order to accomplish all the things of purchasing the property, constructing it, and various activities I'll go into later on. This is the second part of what is known as Wentworth Community Housing. And the first part was a whole series of apartments off of Sykes Mountain Avenue on Wentford Lane. And this was 21 units. 17 of those are the second part of that development project off of Sykes Mountain Avenue, and also 4 units in Wilder on Hartford Avenue. One of the requirements that we have at the time of receiving funds is that we go through a process of periodic progress reports, and at the very end, we also have a public hearing with providing that information on the progress of the project and how the accomplishments that were set forth in the original grant were met. And that's what we are having this evening, is that public hearing. Prior to the termination, we have to report specifically on how we have met the program requirements. And those are about 4 different items that we look at. And that is that all of the CDP funds were expended as outlined in the grant agreement. The resources also were received and expended in accordance with the environmental review requirements, and all the work under the grant agreement has been satisfied and completed. And then one of the other is that the benefits of the grant agreement have been met. And those benefits are that at least 51% of the households that are occupying the properties have met our low and moderate income. And in this particular situation, we have 4 units that also serve of the total 21 units. 17 of them meet those low and moderate income standards, and that's based on the area median income that's set by federal agencies. And 9 of those households are at 30% of median income, 2 are at 50% of median income, and 6 are at 80% of median income. And then there are 4 units that are above the 80% of what they call area median income. 39 people of those households also are low mod. There are 39 people that are benefiting, 32 are low mod, and 7 are non-low mod. We also have 17 of those households are white head of households. 6 are have households where there's a person over the age of 62. 17 have female head of households, and 3 with disabled individual members. So at this point, it is the opportunity for the public to speak on behalf of any comments that they may have regarding that project, and to let you know if they have any questions. I can potentially answer all of those, but also Andrew Winter is here, as well as Sue Cobb. And so if you have any specific questions on the project itself, they can also provide assistance in answering those.
Thank you, Lori. Do you have any public comment on Zoom?
Not currently.
Not currently. There's no one in here right now. Do the select board members have questions for Lori? Lanny?
Yeah, just one question. What is considered area median income?
Oh gosh, I didn't bring that with me. Okay, so Andrew, Sue, could you pipe in and give us the current stuff? I think it's based on a household of 4 members of the household, and typically that's how they look at it. And then it's an individual one. Andrew, would you be able to answer that question? You might be able to need to be brought over as a panelist.
He's got his hand up.
We can just.
Okay. I'm going to join as a panel.
I'm sorry, I usually have those numbers with me, and they're not in my packet with me today.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My apologies. Median income for a family of four is approximately $78,000 in Windsor County. So, and it is based on family size. So the smaller family, so, it may be maxing out at about 40,000 for 42,000 for a single person, 55,000 for three, 66,000 for two, 66,000 for three, and about 78,000 for a family of four. That's median.
Thank you.
And the LMI is lower median income, I take it, that abbreviation? And what is that number?
So, Laura, do you want to answer that one?
Well, the LMI, so it's the lowest is 30% of that income that was just quoted as the LMI. So you can see that there are many individuals that are below the 80% and that are benefiting from this. And that to me is a really good accomplishment that we have of this program, because it's really hitting at those individuals that only have 30 or 50%. So if you take the numbers together in this instance, you would have, of those 17 households, 11 of them only make up to 50% of that median income for a household of four. So if you take the 75% and, that's 50% of that. And so that's 37,500 is a household income for four, and they're benefiting from the program. And then the same thing would be 6 of those are at 80% of LMI.
Any more questions, Lenny?
I just still didn't get the question answered as far as what LMI stands for.
Low and moderate income. So the very low end of that is 30%. The middle ground of the percentage of beneficiary is at 50% of the minimum income, low, moderate income, which is the median income for the area is 75,000 for family of four, as an example. So 30% is the very low. Then there's a middle ground, which is at 50%. And then 80% is what they call moderate.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
The definition was.
Dan?
I just want to thank Twin Pines and Lori and all the parties that were involved in bringing this affordable housing that's much needed to Hartford. I remember doing the ribbon cutting, I think it was last fall. The space is beautiful. The residents there are very appreciative. There's inside space, outside space, and if I'm correct, I think there's some green energy involved as well there. So I'm thankful that you guys sort of checked all the boxes for what we're trying to do in town and addressing the need that is so great. So we appreciate that. Thank you.
Welcome.
Well, let me thank the select board and the town staff. Probably should have led with that. Went right to answering questions, but I would be remiss if I didn't thank the select board for prioritizing affordable housing projects like this as an area worthy of pursuing state funding through the Vermont Community Development Program. We could not do that, the work that we do, without that kind of support. So very much appreciated. And I will say, it's been a pleasure to work with Lori and the rest of her team. And frankly, with the folks at Public Works and elsewhere throughout town government to help make projects like this happen. None of these projects are ever quick or easy. And they do require a lot of input from a lot of different town officials, and we really appreciate all that Hartford does to make projects like this possible. This project, to pick up on one of your comments there just now, we're pleased that we've been able to incorporate solar into both phases, phase 1 and phase 2 of the Wentworth project. You can't see it, but it's up there. And it's a big part of what we're trying to do throughout our portfolio. So thank you for recognizing that. And thank you again for your support.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Lori. Any public comment on Zoom?
No hands raised.
No hands? Anyone in the room? Okay, nobody here. So what I think I'll do is close the open hearing, and then we'll discuss a motion on the grant closeout. So I will close the open hearing and we will just continue as the select board. So our next item is a motion on this grant closeout. Any discussion among the select board? I'm happy to entertain discussion or a motion. Ally?
If there's no discussion, Mr. Chair, I'd move that we authorize the town manager to sign all necessary documents to complete the grant closeout.
Second.
Got a second discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, looks like it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lori, and thank you, Andrew, again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next item of business is the town manager's report.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to give you a little bit of an update on a big issue that came up with this week. And it's mentioned in our significant activities report, but we did have a case that was a significant case for the Hartford Police Department. First off, everyone is safe. Everyone stayed safe, and it wasn't just us, it was federal agents as well. On Wednesday, April 13th, so just about a week ago, the Hartford Police Department, the Vermont State Police Bomb Squad, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and the FBI Bomb Squad, Albany, New York Field Office executed a search warrant in Wilder. The investigators had credible information that the person they were looking for was making explosive devices and recently had been making threats to harm people in our community. We were concerned that this was presenting a threat not only to the public, but also the officers who had to serve the warrant that morning based on the information about the types of explosive devices. They took all safety precautions due to the dangerous nature of the type of search warrant and what they were looking for. The warrant was served without incident and the individual was safely taken into custody. As a result of the search warrant, the state police and the FBI bomb squad recovered several explosive devices, a large amount of bomb making material inside the residence. The Vermont State Police Bomb Squad commander said that this was a significant case for them, and it was rare to recover so much explosive devices and material in one house in the state of Vermont. The ATF commander commented that the bombs were getting larger and more sophisticated, and that this individual is definitely a danger to the public. They also recovered an assault rifle, a large amount of ammunition, body armor, and ballistic helmets inside the residence. And investigators found evidence that he supported racist and extremist views. As of today or yesterday, this individual is being held in custody on federal charges. And it's anticipated that this person will be federally indicted on these charges later this month. We hope that he remains in custody. They remain in custody until their trial, which could take several months to happen. So that happened on Wednesday. Again, all of our officers were safe. The neighborhood was safe. Thank you to the residents of Wilder for sheltering in place. And sheltering in place with very little notice. We had officers knock on the door and ask you to stay in your homes, and you did. And that meant that we were able to execute this warrant and detonate some of these explosive devices without anyone getting hurt. Also, thanks to our mutual aid partners who were there supporting us from across the river if we needed them to be, and our state and federal agents. So I remain in contact with the Vermont State Police through our police department, and just wanted to give out thanks to our staff who was there. Fire was nearby, and our staff who was on duty at the time was in location. Happy to entertain questions about the rest of my report, but I know we do have a lot to get through, and also happy to entertain questions about what happened last week as much as I can and as much as I know.
Any questions for Tracy? All right, well, thank you, Tracy. We appreciate it. All right, so we're on to board reports, motions, and ordinances. Our first item is Friends of Quechee Covered Bridge. I don't know if they're coming in by Zoom or.
They said they were going to come in by Zoom, so let me see
Okay.
if they're here. Could we bring over Dave Duval, please? I don't know who he's got coming with him, so we'll see what he says.
Good evening, everyone. Are you able to view the slideshow at this point?
Hi, Dave. We're able to see you. You don't see the slideshow, no.
Hey, let me share the screen here.
Okay.
Show how this is going to happen. Okay, do you have a PowerPoint in front of you now?
We do, thanks.
Okay, very good. Well, I'm Dave Duval. I'm a summer resident of Quechee. I've been involved in what's become known as the Friends of Quechee Covered Bridge since its inception in 2017. Over the last 5 years or so, we've raised more than $120,000 word of mouth efforts, email lists of friends in the general area. And the intent was to put those monies to work to really unify the look of the parcels surrounding the bridge and beautify the area. It's clearly an area with great tourism value, and it's also a source of civic pride for those of us in the area. I'll be joined a little bit later by Paul Simon. Paul lives in the area, and he's a noted landscape and park design architect, and he'll go over some of the plans that we've developed. And what's really brought this forward is we had a large donor, large long-term supporter come forward last year with a very significant pledge to move this forward. So we've kind of put it in overdrive with the help of funding from Mascoma Bank and another long-term supporter. We funded Paul's effort to come up with more detailed design plans, plans that certainly are not bid ready or put the shovel in the ground ready, but they were able to give us much better estimates of what the costs of the projects might be. And Paul will walk us through those plans in a little bit. We'll work closely with Scott Hausler and Laurie Hirschfield over the last 5 years. We've involved them in any meetings of our groups that they were available to join. The town serves as the fiscal agent for this effort. And what that means is any monies raised are sent directly from the donor to the town for safekeeping. And any monies paid out to the various vendors that we've used to landscape a large embankment and the main flower boxes that are placed on the bridge are paid directly from the town to the various vendors. And we certainly appreciate the town providing that assistance. Let me click through this a little bit. So I mentioned we formed in 2017. We're not a legal entity. We're just a group of people that call on our friends to donate money, and we try and coordinate some of the planning of what goes on there. If anyone has any questions after this presentation, they can email questions or comments to us at fqcb2017@gmail. Or if anyone wants to make a donation, they go to Parks and Recreation directly.
Dave, would you be able to put the slideshow in presentation mode just so it expands to the full screen? It's a little bit hard to read the slides with you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
worries.
Let's see.
Slideshow, nope, go to, yeah.
Hopefully that helps.
Yes, that does. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I had already covered most of that ground, but on this slide, it's an aerial depiction of the parcels adjacent to the bridge being here. Color coded in green are the parcels of land that are owned by the town. And these in the salmon color are owned by Simon Pierce. Not everyone was aware that this overlook area is owned by Simon Pierce, nor was everyone aware that the embankment that has been landscaped is property owned by Simon Pierce. But just to get you used to the names, we refer to this area as the embankment, the Quechee Falls Park, which the town has so nicely built and is maintaining. The town parking lot is an area that we know needs some attention, both from a beautification standpoint and safety standpoint. The natural area here at the base of Waterman Hill to the right is currently very much overgrown and has a variety of fences, and many of them are collapsed. And over here, the overlook area perhaps has some of the best views of the mill, the Quechee Falls Park, and the falls. But again, it's overgrown and not a very inviting area at this point. So our plan and our hope would be to beautify this area. Paul's going to talk to these in detail, so I'm not going to go through all the verbiage here. But that embankment has been largely built out at this point. Henderson's does the maintenance at this point, which is really a mulching effort and making sure everything is watered and the garden beds are cleaned out. It was done with all native vegetation, plants. And that was a key element here, as well as everything that we've done or are thinking about doing is very low maintenance. We don't want to incur a whole bunch of costs going forward. The Quechee Falls Park, I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's very nice as is. There are a few items that Paul has suggested that we make some improvements to, if at all possible. We understand there are FEMA restrictions, so anything that we did there would obviously have to comply with any restrictions in place. The natural area, as I mentioned, coming down Watermill Hill, this is on the right-hand side, just before you go through the bridge. Doesn't look like anything like this today. It's not a very inviting area. And again, this is really the gateway to Quechee Village. And we're trying to make it more inviting, a bigger source of civic pride, and to enhance tourism, which we feel benefits us all. A quick look at the overview area. Paul will zoom in on this more, but this is Simon Pierce property looking directly across the water at the mill and at the Quechee Falls Park. The town owns the parking lot. It always had a green area here between the parking area and coming through the bridge and going left to right on Quechee Main Street. This green area was lost during the construction of the Quechee Falls Park. This became a staging area for the construction. It became basically a dirt lot. And whenever people saw dirt, they thought parking. And it's now where a lot of creative parking takes place, particularly in the warmer weather. And we'll get to some of the safety issues that creates. But this whole area had been planned to be improved, and we hope that we can someday do that. So what you see now, this is a existing condition. This dirt at one point was grass. You can see that, you know, when the porta potties were there and the equipment was there and the supplies were there to build a park across the street, it just got turned into an urban dirt lot. What's happened though is some of the safety concerns. As you come through the bridge and try and look right, if you've got a whole bunch of cars there, sometimes double or triple parked during the swimming season, drivers cannot see what's coming at them, coming around the corner, coming up Main Street. So that's a safety hazard. The wooden, what do you call these? Guardrails in front were, we believe, intended to be temporary. And I know in bringing Tracy up to speed a few weeks ago, she was concerned that those may not be sufficient to stop a vehicle. They're probably sufficient to stop a pedestrian from falling over, although those have really become balance beams for photographers. People seem to want to walk along the top of those trying to grab pictures, and they're not very wide. So whatever plan that could come into play would want to address that. And the other thing that's happened is pedestrians, when you have all these cars, all those locations, there's no clear pathway to get to where you want to cross the street. So as a result, you know, when you have tour buses or people getting out of cars or large crowds of swimmers, it's a bit of mayhem there. And again, it's a worry for drivers and the pedestrians. I guess my last point here is this hydrant right in the middle here was next to the parking lot. Now it's kind of in the middle of two parking lots. And when people want to swim there, there's often 2 or 3 cars blocking the way here. So hopefully, and whatever is done in the future, can clean that all up and keep people in the proper lanes. This drawing, there was a drawing going back as far as 2012 bid plans from, I believe, another designer. This was done by, I'm sorry, clicked it, I didn't mean to. I believe this was Holden Engineering, one of the design plans that had come up. So the town had contemplated this way back when the Quechee Falls Park was being done as phase 2 of that initiative. And we've tried to only enhance this. Paul Simon will address a couple of issues that he noted with it. But there is an existing plan and would like to adhere as closely to that as possible. Another feature is throughout all of the adjacent parcels, we think there's an opportunity to add what's known as interpretive panels. I'm sure we've all seen them at other tourist locations where they talk about different topics and bring people up to speed. They're interesting and educational. We've listed a dozen or so potential topics. There's certainly room for more. And if at all possible, would love to involve high school students in doing some of the research and drafting for these topics, and then have professionals at the end, clean them up and size them and make them more uniform. But we think another way to draw tourists in, engage them, and bring them back for more. So that's the brief overview. With this, I want to turn it over to Paul Simon. I suspect you're going to have to bring him in. I don't know how we do that and keep me advancing the slides, but I'll let you folks figure that one out.
All right, thanks, Dave. Yeah,
You're
we'll bring
welcome.
Paul over.
So, Paul, you can unmute.
Hi there. Can everybody hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
thank you, Paul.
All right, thanks. Thanks for having us tonight. Appreciate that. Yeah, I'm just going to introduce myself. I've been working with the committee and the Parks Department on the project. I'm involved with a company called Park Architecture. We're here in the Hanover, New Hampshire area. We've been doing a lot of work in the Upper Valley area. Most of our projects are actually in Vermont. So we've gone all the way up towards the Canada border. And we've done just a variety of park projects. Recently, the new YMCA in Burlington, Vermont is one of our projects. And we've done work all the way down in Massachusetts as well, like Abigail Adams Park in Weymouth and Arsenal Park in Watertown, Massachusetts. We focus in on developing projects that are historic as well. Similar to the Quechee Bridge project, what we're trying to do is trying to tie the four corners together with some similar detailing and design work for that. We've also worked in the town on other projects, such as 132 South Main Street, which is more of an urban design project for housing. And currently we're working on some other housing projects as well in the town. So, and this is kind of a background on my expertise, and I graduated with a degree in landscape architecture from University of Kentucky. In Kentucky was in the College of Agriculture, Food and Environment. So I have a strong knowledge as well in terms of food gardening and community gardening, have really worked hard in that effort to incorporate gardens in school programs as well. So next slide, Dave. So this is the overall concept plan right now for I guess the four corners here. So, and what we've done as well is broken out each corner in terms of providing a cost estimate to each one. The northwest portion, there's very little work that really needs to be done. There's already been a lot, but what we do believe is probably providing a park bench style that can be duplicated in other parts of the four corners as well. So we have that as an option. And then there's existing concrete retaining walls there, some which have a stone veneer to them, some that do not. So we thought extending the stone veneer throughout the rest of that would be a good idea as well. Dave, I guess and these images here also show some of the ideas as well, in that we'd have to probably zoom in on each one, but that's also included in the plans. I think the next slides, what we do show is kind of more of a close-up view of each. Yeah, so starting, I guess we'll go clockwise here from the town parking lot. This part of the project is, as you may understand, the most expensive part of the project because it's the largest and it includes repaving, granite curbing, concrete walkways, and putting the green space back at the corner there as well. And we thought perhaps a significant tree would look really nice in the green, and we're berming up the green. You can see with the contours there as well to provide some elevation to that. The concrete walk would also be curbed to hinder cars from driving up into the green area as well as the berm. And then we have the interpretive panels there as well along the walkway. And the walkway is designed so that as you walk on it and look at the interpretive panels, you're looking at the bridge itself. And as you continue to walk down the walkway too, there's another incredible view of the natural areas there in the river. So we thought that would be important. The wall is actually in pretty good shape structurally there. So we thought putting a veneer on it would be a good idea as well to kind of tie that into with the other corners of the park. So that's another piece of that. And then of course, we've got a couple benches there too that are placed along the walkway as well. And these are like backless type benches. So if you're sitting and waiting for somebody to pick you up in the parking lot or looking at the green on either side, the bench works either way, facing the view or facing the street activities. The parking lot is designed based on the Holden plan that was the preferred option from what we understand that the town liked. We did adjust a couple of the dimensional aspects to that to make sure it met code. So we have that. I don't need to get into the details of that, but that's just like, the width of the vehicular access way and the degree of parking, the angling, and the spacing dimensional requirements. We did have thought some light poles might be good in here as well. So we have placed those. And then there's additional interpretive panels and markers further down in the parking lot area as well. So, in this parking lot improvement area, the cost is about $180,000 for the parking lot area, and the green space area is about $50,000. There is some overlap in terms of, the concrete walks and curbing and whatnot. So, next slide, Dave. So this slide shows the other two corners, the southeast natural area and the southwest walkway area. So the southeast natural area, we believe it's really not well accessible for pedestrian use, but could be enhanced by first getting in there and removing a lot of the invasives. There's been, over time, there's been some invasives that have come in and started dominating some of that. So getting in there and clearing some of that out would be good. And then replanting with Vermont native varieties is what we would think to do well here. And then providing an edge to the bed and then, some lawn area and then these plantings. And we chose low maintenance varieties and colorful species. And again, Vermont natives that once established should do pretty well on their own. Of course, there's going to be some maintenance, some pruning and upkeep periodically, but not too much. So, and then the southwest walkway, we thought, one of the things people do is they come down, they turn around and they walk back when they walk north. And we thought the loop was a great idea to kind of complete that, right? So, and then we added in another backless bench there, same style that, you can sit and look at the view or sit the other way. And, we also placed in some ornamental iron fencing in different parts of the park as well. We had that I didn't mention, but in the parking lot area as well that would be consistent. So we'll have a similar ornamental fence that carries through throughout. So that's that one there. And then the last one, again, was just the northwest overlook. Really doesn't need too much. I think in our estimates, we did include some additional perennial plantings as well, and I mentioned adding the stone veneer where we believe it would help enhance the park, as well as, replacing the benches. So we have some consistency there between all four corners. So,
Thank you, Paul.
and this is kind of the last slide with, the view of the bridge, but as well as the view from the parking lot area left, because there's an incredible view there as well that really could be captured with this park improvement project. So,
Thanks, Paul. Any questions, select board members? Kim?
This looks amazing. I guess my one question is there a funding request as part of this, or is this something that you're hoping to do with through grants and fundraising?
To date, it's been private funding. I think between private funding and hopefully we can identify and apply for some grant monies. If there is a request, it's at some point. I don't know that this group's abilities would ever extend to the hardscaping, meaning the sidewalks and parking lot area. At one point that was envisioned by the town. So to the extent there's a funding request per se, it would be hopefully that makes its way back into town budgets at some point. Near term, we can do some of the greenscaping between the bridge and the parking area and alleviate some of those safety concerns. But private funding, I don't believe would allow us to go beyond that into the hardscaping.
That makes sense. And I guess I would just mention that because we just approved the 2023 fiscal year budget that goes through June 30. Like, if there were a funding request, I would encourage you to prepare it for the 24 fiscal year budget. So, just in terms of not missing the boat. And of course, at that point, these numbers would probably increase further. In any case, I think it's a wonderful project, and I really am excited to hear more about it. And
Yeah, and we understand that it's most cost efficient to mobilize once and do everything, but we also understand that may not be possible. And assuming that we could get to $100,000 or so, we could probably do most of the greenscaping on the four corners of the bridge. We could do the landscaping portion of it, address some of the safety concerns, and start to improve the look without necessarily creating new parking spots.
certainly, thank you.
Harry?
Yes, I have a quick question. It is beautiful. I'm really impressed by all of this. I just had a quick question. When you were talking about getting rid of the invasives, I was wondering what the invasives were and how you planned on getting rid of them.
right. So there is, from what I noticed, there's some buckthorn and tree of heaven there. That's Ailanthus altissima is the tree of heaven. So those are the two that were prominent. And I don't remember, I think there might've been, it's just been a while since I've been out there. And, I think that's just, it happens. But the problem is they start dominating a little bit. And, the intention is to have the same landscape contractor probably that's going to put the new plantings in, go in and remove those as well. And then we'll probably do a site visit to ensure that they know what they need to remove. And what we usually do is just bring some ribbon and tagging. We tag the invasives off that need to come out. But on a bank, we have to be careful too about removing root growth that is helping to support the slope conditions. So I think it's still early enough. They seem like the invasives are young enough that they can still be removed. There's still some other native plantings there that are well established and will do fine to help hold the slope. But what the intent is to get these out of there sooner rather than later, just because it's better to remove them away from this slope condition, because otherwise you'd have to probably just cut them leave the roots, but then they still grow back, right? So we want to get them out while they're young enough to remove them. And there's other native growth that isn't going to be suffocated by the invasives coming in. So
I just wanted to make sure, if there were any plans to use pesticides or herbicides, but it doesn't sound like that's.
no, yeah,
Okay.
it's small enough that it'll all be done by hand. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Lanny?
Yeah, being a resident of not the village, but outside the village of Quechee, I'm very supportive. I travel this area quite often and I see this and I think it's quite the eyesore. I guess I would first like to see the focus be on the northeast section across the road from the current pocket park that we have there, be my first guess. And the question I guess I would have is, what happens for maintenance to this? Are you hoping that Parks and Rec will take this on for a maintenance, or have we thought ahead enough on that?
Well, we're certainly thinking ahead in the design phase to make sure that everything is low maintenance. We've talked a bit with Scott. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I believe he's prepared to take on a bit of maintenance. And the embankment across the street, we do annual fundraising. And we, at least to date, and it's our expectation, raise the funds to be able to bring in folks like Henderson's or whoever might be the supplier of the day to do the work. And whoever we contract with does have to go through the town's procurement process and meet the requirements there. But we understand we're not trying to build anything and then dump that on the town to take care of, because we understand that isn't a viable option. We're trying to, keep the cost down with the understanding that it's probably going to be our responsibility to keep the funding going.
Okay, and can you put back up the depiction of the that northeast side?
Yep, I think.
So a question about
This
right
one?
there. Yes, exactly. So the fence that you were looking to go around this, is that going to be the same style of fence that is currently around the Quechee Falls Park?
Yes, there's a couple different styles there though. So what we want to do is try to get one style that be consistent throughout. So it may likely be that we choose one of the, I think there's at least 2 styles there in the Quechee Falls Park, and we would choose one of them and then continue that one through.
Yeah, one of them currently is a black chain link. I think would probably prefer to go with a higher grade fencing than that. But that's all to be determined.
And the fence that was going to be abutting the concrete that is currently there, you were going to have a fence there that wraps around, basically comes to Quechee, Waterman Hill, to reach Waterman Hill. Was there going to be a fence there, or was there not going to be a fence there?
I'm sorry, you're now on the south side of the bridge?
Nope, I'm still on northeast parking lot. From the end of the bridge, okay, to that, if you keep walking around to the concrete that is currently there. Nope, I don't know how to explain it. Right there. Is that going to be a fence, or is that going to be right there from there to the area they were at before? Well, that's current concrete, but
yeah, that's concrete currently. That's a concrete wall. It's an old foundation wall, I believe.
Yes.
And what Paul envisions is putting a stone veneer on there to match what's already in the park and to mirror the stone wall at the base of the embankment, which is Simon Pierce's property.
Okay, I'm just wondering about if you're still going to leave it accessible for people to get down in the rocks and swim, there's going to be impediments to that or not.
Well, we've asked that in a couple of meetings. We don't know what the desire is. Is it to enhance access to swimming or to slow down the access to the swimming? That's kind of an open question at this point. We don't really think that's something for us to determine. We know that you can't deny swimmers access to the river, but it does strike us as a pretty dangerous area right now, getting down in there.
Correct. One would think that we would want to put something up to be a deterrent, and then if they go around it, they go around it. So,
right. The intent here is, you can see on either side of that concrete, the existing concrete wall, is that the ornamental, it's maybe hard to see here, but the ornamental fence would continue from that wall. So there,
On here?
yep, actually a little bit further down. Yeah, so those are the interpretive, yeah, right there. That's the ornamental fence. Just go along that. Yeah, you can just, oh, your cursor just disappeared.
Where would you like me to go, Paul? I'm sorry.
So start from the concrete wall that's going to have the veneer on either end of that. Okay, so
Yeah.
now, yeah, just go down a little bit on an angle. There you go. There's the fence, and then go right. Yeah, there you go. That's the fence there. You can see there's a little bit of a green space, and there's room for the interpretive panels. There's room for the concrete walkway. So so we looked at the grading closely on that, and we believe that's where it can go. Now, if you can go back to that concrete wall, and we can take it to the bridge, it goes right, yep, right from there, and it keeps going all the way down, and that's the ornamental fence, and it'll go there. Now, if it's determined that you wanted to still provide access, we wouldn't recommend it, but because there's other ways to get there, right? We believe if you keep going east, right, there's a more gentle path that exists that'll get you down there. And that's the purpose of the walkway, I guess, along Quechee Main Street. So that could get you there, but you could always just leave a gap, and one of these panels in the ornamental iron fence, you could leave a gap, and you can leave some access on an accessible route. People want to find a way, they're going to find a way anyway, but I agree to as a deterrence to just fence this part of it off, because it's just so steep.
I'm fully in support of particularly this place being the first object you folks to focus on. It would be, to me, it's the key area. The rest of them don't look too bad, but this one looks terrible.
This one looks bad, and it's also, importantly to some of us, it's where the most donor interest lies as well. So it'll be easiest to us to fundraise around this area, but it's also the most expensive area.
Yes. Thank you.
Expensive to build, but I believe, back to the maintenance question, it's low maintenance. I mean, there's a lot of hardscape here. We're elevating with the curb to create the green space. There's a lawn that'll have to be periodically cut, of course, for that green space, a tree put in, but then these interpretive panels, you'll have numerous ones that can provide the history of Quechee. There's already a program that Dave's looking at to maybe bring some youngsters into to help guide how those would get designed and what information would get put on those. So I think what we're looking at here is park benches, hardscape, interpretive panels, a lot of stuff that comes in, but doesn't necessarily need a ton of maintenance to it and maintenance cost.
All right, thank you, Paul. Dave, any hands up again?
Rocket.
Rocket, we can bring Rocket over.
I just wanted to, this is an incredible presentation. It's like one of the best things I've ever seen in my life. But I am a little bit confused as a select board member. I guess building off of Kim's earlier question, there's nothing we're specifically voting on, right? This is more of just an update as to where the project is.
Yes, we've been working very closely with Scott, a little less so with Laurie, but she's certainly been apprised of everything going along. We brought Tracy up to speed a few weeks ago. And as part of that meeting, the recommendation was, boy, we're getting closer here. We do have some funds available to us. We need to address the safety issues that are really driven by what's now a dirt parking lot here. And if we're going to start thinking about either temporary or permanent improvements to the landscaping there to address some of those safety concerns, it's really time to bring the select board into the loop.
So in terms of my role as a select board member here, am I just sort of absorbing all this information for the purpose of a future vote that's going to be around safety or around design or community charrettes? What's the best way to think about this?
I would say some additional design and permitting work, perhaps, will start bubbling up this summer. And we just wanted you to have this as background information, so it doesn't hit your desk or desks without you having any knowledge of the project or any background on the project.
Perfect.
And we do know the select board has turned over at least once, maybe a few times, since any of this was probably last mentioned in a select board meeting. So we wanted you folks to have a general awareness. As additional conversations come up, we'll provide additional background, but there's really nothing for you to do this evening.
Wonderful. Thank you for the clarification and this wonderful presentation.
You're welcome.
Yep.
And I just wanted to add, think that was a good question, Rocket. I mean, basically, this is a community project that is kind of being proposed to happen, but some of it is on town property. So I think they just want to keep us in the loop because they're primarily offering to improve the space, potentially may ask for funding at some point, but it is the town's land. So they just want to keep us in the loop on what they would like to do with the town's land. Is that fair?
That is fair, with the understanding that we know we can't do anything without the permitting and the town's approval. So we can want all we want, but we can't do anything without seeking the appropriate approvals.
Thank you.
All right, Dave and Paul, thank you so much. Very informative. We look forward to seeing how this progresses. We appreciate you taking the time to share all this with us.
Great, thank you for your time as well.
Great. All right, so we're moving on to ambulance billing. We've got Scott Cooney, the fire chief. Scott, I'll turn it over to you if you'd like.
You got me for two back-to-back, Mike. So
Oh.
if you guys want to take a break first before you listen to me for two.
Looks like we want a break. Let's come back at 7:35.
Yes, ma'am. Otherwise, I'm just gonna be song and dancing. Oh, yeah, he's got a popcorn.
Okay, yeah, because actually this was dated in September.
It's in the packet.
So,
I'm gonna
I was
pack it out.
Did they ask for something already?
Yeah, I got it.
Maybe it's the tea and
I know.
soda. and-
Okay.
We're live. We are live.
We're back. All right. So we're back with Scott Cooney, the fire chief. And we're going to do some ambulance billing and the local emergency plan update. So Scott, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, both these items I'm going over tonight are annual, so I'll be before you annually to take care of both of these items right about the same time each year. I started off tonight's presentation with just a brief 101. I know Tracy has most of the department heads come and see the board around this time, as there may be some new members on the board, and just a brief overview of who and what the fire department is, and then we'll just segue right into the ambulance write-off piece. I'll just start by opening 2019, the fire department received agency accreditation as an accredited fire department. We're one of only 300 agencies internationally throughout the world. So we're pretty happy about attaining that status and plan to maintain it. The next slide. So FY22, this shows the current organizational structure of the fire department. Administration, you have the fire chief, the deputy fire chief in charge of operations and training. I have a fire marshal's office that does code enforcement and plans review, full-time fire marshal and a part-time fire marshal to do inspections around the community. And I have my admin assistant who also serves as the billing technician for all our ambulance billing. The nuts and bolts of the operation are conducted by the duty shifts. There are 4 of them: A shift, B shift, C shift, and D shift, all supervised by a shift captain. They work 24-hour rotating shifts, and then another shift will jump on the next day. They work two 24-hour shifts and then end up getting 4 days off. So it's 24 hours on, 48 off, 24 on, and then 4 days. The next slide, after this, we presented the FY23 budget and the Station 2 study that I'll talk about towards the end of the slide. We were authorized to increase staffing by 4 personnel to maintain staffing of Hartford Station 2 and Quechee. So this shows you a modified organizational chart that will kick off in after July. Changes here, as you see, Station 2 becomes staffed with a lieutenant and a firefighter. That provides you ambulance services and first response coming out of the Quechee station. Next one, Tracy. So like I said, the fire department is a 24-hour, 7 days a week, 365 days a year coverage, cover a multitude. Firefighter might not be, is what we are called. There's a lot of historical, a lot of history of why firefighters are firefighters, but really firefighters have adopted an all hazards approach to emergency responses. And the staff covers everything from hazardous materials response, they're rope rescue technicians. We're licensed at the advanced EMT and the paramedic level for EMS services. Staff's water rescue technician certified. In fact, tomorrow with Hanover and Lebanon Fire Department, the staff will be down at Sumner Falls and Heartland practicing swiftwater evolutions first thing in the morning through noon. They're also certified firefighters, and some of the specialties we do are trench and collapse rescue as well as some confined space. The next slide just shows you kind of historical call volume for the town of Hartford. You can see progressively things are busy in Hartford. Things get busier every year, and that trend has been continuing. The last statistic shows a proposed number. I think we ended last year with 2,698 calls. We were just shy of the 2,700 mark, which is the highest number we've had to date. The next slide, Station 2 is the study we started back in, the board authorized me to try it back in 2021. We installed a living trailer out in Quechee with the purpose of what Quechee had was an unmanned fire station with an engine in it that we had some volunteer or call personnel out in Quechee. We provided full-time staffing with current staff and put an ambulance out there to reduce response time to that region of Hartford. You can see by the map, the lighter color represents Station 1's response area, and Station 1's located on VA Cutoff Road. Station 2 is located on Willard Road, past the Quechee Library. And you can see those are the response areas we were using each station as their primary response zone. Let's see, next one, Tracy. It just shows you a picture this winter of what that kind of operation looked like. So you see Hartford Station 2 is purely a 2-bay garage building that holds those 2 vehicles. Has a bathroom in it, but that's about it. Built in 1989, I think. What we had installed is we contracted with a emergency housing trailer company. You can see to the right of that slide, there's a 2-bedroom trailer there with a full kitchenette and those kind of things. Had that installed on the site to serve as a temporary lodging locations while the guy's working their 24-hour shift. And that's currently what exists out in Quechee today. Later down the road, when the board starts entertaining capital needs of the community, you'll be seeing me to talk about what to do in Quechee, but the plan would be there for renovations, new station design, and then updating storage and those kind of equipments. But that's just kind of a nuts and bolts overview of the fire department. And if there's no questions about any of those, yes.
I have a question, Scott. So out to Station 2, are you running a paramedic or?
So it's a good question. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. It's not 50-50. It's depending on the shift complement. Every shift has 2 paramedics assigned, but it's not mandated that we have a paramedic on duty. So depending on if they're on vacation or not, the shifts are covered. But usually there's a paramedic. We try to have a paramedic at Station 1, a paramedic at Station 2, but it's not all the time.
In your map that you showed of Station 1 to Station 2 area coverage, where is the actual line that they would meet for response times?
Where they kind of, yeah, because of course, if you start in one location or another, there's going to be an area in town where your response times are equal.
Where would that be?
Well, Center of Town Road, off of Center of Town Road is one of those locations.
But going towards West Hartford, where would that be?
So right now, the cutoff in West Hartford is the bridge. So Station 2 covers everything from Westfield Drive towards Quechee.
So that includes Pomfret Road?
It does. And then Station 1 covers everything from Route 14 side. I guess that would be
up to Sharon?
east. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Okay. Moving into the ambulance write-off. All right, a little bit of background on the next slide, Tracy. So currently the fire department does bill for emergency medical services, and we're allowed to bill when we transport a patient by ground to a medical facility. So if we go to a residence and don't do any transport, there's no bills for those kind of services. So we're talking lift assist, somebody fallen, needs help getting back into bed, they need something checked, they want to just have somebody take a look at it. Those aren't billed for services. We are only allowed to bill when we actually load a patient into the ambulance and send them to a medical facility. Okay. Rates and fees are determined annually and approved by the select board during your annual fee schedule review, which I imagine is coming up really quick.
Late June.
Late June. So we'll be back again talking about those. Like I said earlier, all the billing in the fire department is done by our administrative assistant. We contract out for a specific software to do ambulance billing and to generate invoices and track methods of payment. And she uses a company called TriTech to accomplish that. Our current rates, ALS 1, we bill out at $650. ALS 2 is at $850. A BLS call, so that's basic life support, $575. For every loaded mile, that means patient on board being transported is $14.50 a mile. And then if we intercept another agency, so for example, another agency around us doesn't have a paramedic, and they're requesting that higher level of care, we charge that agency $375 to provide that service. All right. So revenue statewide, the averages are about 80% billed is collectible. And we'll get more into the why of that. We average right around the state collection average about 80%. So 80% of what we put out, send out in bills, we tend to get back in payment. In 2020, we estimated our revenue generated from ambulance transports to be about $425,000. We actually collected $606,936, as shown in the slide. We increased our revenue estimations for the following year to $590,000, and we ended up collecting about $650,000 in ambulance revenue. All right, so tonight we're talking about write-offs. So this is why a write-off happens for the most part, is from uncollectible fees associated with ambulance billing. In the simplest sense, it's from people who don't pay their bill at all. that generates a fund of uncollectible debt. And then from the circumstances I'm going to describe next. When we subscribe to Medicare and participate in Medicare for reimbursement, Medicare only allows an 80% reimbursement from Medicare to the agency providing the service. So in the example I have on the slide, this is a real incident, but we billed a patient $678.12 for services rendered. If you had private insurance, that would be your bill. But since this is Medicare, they only pay $339.63 on that account. And they pay for a certain level of mileage that mandatorily requires us to write off a certain amount of money. And that's why we start building those funds of uncollectible funds. Next one. Medicaid is similar, although a lower percentage. They only allow 51% billing return. So in this case, we charged out $781 in services and received $344 back as reimbursement from Medicaid. Same with the mileage, and then the write-off for that one call becomes $361. Next slide. VA, similar kind of process. VA payments only 68% of the total cost. So in this case, a $739 charge has been reduced, requiring a $230 write-off. Next. Private insurance is a different story. We bill 100%. Don't accept assignment, which means a negotiation from the insurance company to reduce the guaranteed payment rate. We require patients to pay in full. We don't typically write off anybody's bill for any reason. And then we do set payment arrangements for as low as $5 a month. And we're very reasonable with that, and people take advantage of that. And we do have people that pay their $5 once a month, sometimes in cash when they walk in. So all in all, quite a few years ago now, we met with our auditors and finance department to determine the best process to write off. There was one point where we wrote off, like, we weren't doing this regularly, and there was 10 years of debt we took off the books after one of the audit examinations. So we set the process up, so we're only keeping 2 years on the books now. So in this year, we're asking the board to write off from July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019, the total write-off amount of $138,499.12. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
I have a question. So if someone gets transported, they're on Medicare and they get transported, Medicare will reimburse up to 80%. So the fact that we get the payment reimbursement from Medicare mean like we are not allowed to try and collect like the other part. That's a condition essentially of getting that.
It's a condition
the
of being a
funds.
Medicaid recipient.
Okay.
You're not allowed to bill anymore.
Gotcha.
There's certain amounts, like I think if you go back to, so this Medicare payment right here, there is a specific portion of a bill that usually Medicare requires the patient to pay, but it's uncollectible by us. We can't go after that. People have the different Medicare parts sometimes of their insurance that does cover that excess, but not all people carry it.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm sorry. I just had a quick question that piggybacks on that. So if a person is on Medicare, but they have a supplemental, will the supplemental pick that up?
In most cases, it does.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No. What was the amount we wrote off last year?
In the 90s.
And is it been comparable? Like
It's been ticking up a little bit every year. I think as we increase our call volume, as we collect more, the write-off goes higher with it. And I think I've talked to the board about this before, is because statistically, Hartford, our transport percentage, I would say probably between 60, I don't have these numbers in front of me, so I'm guessing a little bit, 60 to 70% of our patient population is a Medicaid, Medicare recipient. So if we raise our transport rates up higher, it just may make our income a little bit higher, but it also makes it write-off greater. So it has that compounding kind of effect to it.
Can I do one follow-up?
Oh, yeah, sure.
The estimate versus collected So the estimate was what was projected for revenue from ambulance service in the budget, and then, so we did collect above what we projected for revenue, but then there's still 20% to write off at that point.
No, anything that was generated in the revenue was revenue received.
Right.
There was no write-off associated
Oh,
with
that
any
was
of
like
that.
post.
Yeah, so when we do the budget preparation, because, I mean, when you look at your ballot, it says so much generated from revenue
Yeah.
is the offsetting amount.
Right.
Those estimates come from department heads.
Yeah.
So I estimate, typically, I look at 2 years of ambulance revenue and it's a guess of what you're gonna draw for next year, and that offsets whatever you raise from taxes.
So the amount, there was like a 400 something estimate and a 600
Sure.
something collected.
So
that-
we got a gain back
Yeah.
here. Yeah,
Right.
that's probably why the unassigned fund went up a little bit more in that given case.
And when you list out the amounts that are charged for different services and things,
Mhm.
like, does that include, so that would include like whatever materials or oxygen or whatever's used during the ambulance, that's not all billed separately, right?
No, so we don't typically itemize expenses. It's a global kind of classification that an ALS 1 call means you're giving one medication and one invasive airway therapy or something like
Okay.
that. To classify as ALS 2, it might be 3 drugs were given intravenously, an airway was established and some other things, cardiac pacing, EKG.
Part of the
Yeah,
package.
if you check certain boxes, it changes you to the different billing rate.
Thank you.
Yep.
Lanny,
Like to make a motion, sir? Ready for that?
I'm ready. Everyone else? Okay, yeah, let's do it.
I move to authorize the town manager to authorize the finance director and the fire department to write off $138,499.12 as uncollectible ambulance debt.
I'll second.
We have a second from Ally. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, looks like it was unanimous. Excellent. And our next, we've still got Scott. So our next issue is the local emergency management plan adoption. So I'll turn it over to you, Scott.
All right, so this is an annual document required by state law that every municipality review and authorize and adopt their local emergency management plan, either with or without changes for any given year. And once again, it's usually held right after town meeting and new elections take place. Because typically there's name changes within the listings. And that's pretty much all that I've corrected for this year. We've had quite a few faces and names change along the way. Tracy serves as the emergency management director. I serve as emergency management coordinator for the town. I typically prepare this document. So what this document is a beginning step for any incident commander, emergency management director to have a starting place when an emergency did occur in Hartford that required us opening our emergency operations center. Just gives a place to identify people that might need to be contacted. It shows resources that may be available for certain needs for any type of emergency. It identifies NIMS type of resources, which is the National Incident Management System, according to their guidelines. So if we were called by Vermont Emergency Management for, let's say, another community that was in dire need, and they wanted to know how many type 3 hydraulic excavators can Hartford donate to the cause, we can look at this, and these have all been NIMS typed already, so we can just say we have one available to us and we can supply that. Because when this is FEMA speak, so FEMA's generated the language, that's how you have to communicate in during emergency situations. It also gives us agencies to notify and places to post public informations and warnings around this community. It lists out pre-identified vulnerable populations that may need to be contacted in an emergency throughout the community. It locates our shelters, contact numbers to how to activate and turn them on, so on and so forth, and then a list of every responsible party within the municipality on who to contact and get the ball rolling kind of in any kind of emergency. So there's been a few updates. The board chairs have changed, so their names get put on that. Phone numbers have changed a little bit, faces have changed. Those are pretty much the updates. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions? Lanny?
Just one, Scott, can you just define the difference between your role and the town manager's role in emergency management as far as director and manager for that role, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So emergency management coordinator, the role as in that ICS method is for me to manage kind of making sure operations can happen in the background. And so that when we have to pull the trigger to activate the EOC, the emergency management director can step in and run the operation. So in an emergency, it's for years, the fire chief used to sit as the emergency management director. I found that a little clunky myself because typically you're going to want me at whatever is going wrong to manage the incident that's happening rather than located in the operations center trying to come up with ways to support the incident. Because typically the emergency operations center is there to support the emergency, figure out the planning, the finance, how we're going to pay for it, where are they going to get their materials from, those kind of things. So as an incident commander, that would be my role as fire chief to deal with the building collapse that's happened or the flooding or doing the rescues. That's for me to organize. Where the emergency management director, I say I need something, they're the ones that find it, give it, and give me the resources so I can execute our duties. So that's typically how my role would work in emergency management.
So is everything pretty well documented for the emergency management director to be able to find what they need to do the job?
That is the intent of this plan.
Because
right?
it's quite overwhelming for someone to step into that role. And Tracy's not been exposed to emergency management side of things, I'm sure.
Actually,
take on that role,
Tracy got to do it a lot in California. We went over that when she first started with the town. Their code, the way they handled COVID in Berkeley was like textbook emergency management, emergency operations center stuff. So I think we're all good there, Lanny. As far as department heads, we all drilled of the statewide Cat 4 exercise, which is a catastrophic emergency event in the state. It was all fake, but we all got to drill it for 2 days. We even did so much as to busy out the primary emergency operations center at the public safety building and had to drop all the materials and move them over to DPW and see if we could make it all happen from Public Works too. We drilled that a couple of years ago. So we practiced it a couple of times.
A couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Spaces have changed. Drilling's always good. It's just gonna squeeze.
It would be wise to probably do another drill
Oh yeah.
soon.
You know, the emergency management from the state puts out lots of different training opportunities. We try to take advantage of them as a group.
Kim?
I know this has gone back and forth before, but there had been an ICS training online that I had done, I think, a couple times and found it to be really useful, but it doesn't appear that there is that training available anymore.
It should be through the National Fire Academy and National Emergency Training Center, NETC, I think. There's a lot of .govs out there, but I think if you go to the ready.gov website, it'll probably get you there.
If I can find it, I would recommend it. It was something that was recommended when I first joined the board, and it was basically like one of those, just online training where you are fed a bunch of information and then you take little quizzes along the way. But it was basically like, what happens if you have to activate the emergency operations center? And it's like ICS's incident command center. So anyway, I found it to be very enlightening and useful, but then was not able to find the online training. Like there's a PDF, which I could always share with everyone, but if I can find the online training, I'd really recommend it.
So this is separate from the town's emergency operations plan, which is a separate hard document that should be available to all board members. I think there's a copy of it up in the town manager's office, but that kind of lays out the risk assessment of the community, where we see the highest target hazards are and how to handle specific events within that. Tracy and I have been talking about, getting that revised and hiring an outside contractor to come in and actually assemble a new plan for us. So that's in the works.
We need to think about a little bit about climate change and how that's affecting, especially flooding in our community, and some other issues that we need to be aware of with the changing climate.
Great. I'm happy to entertain a motion on this one. Dan?
I move the adoption of the 2022 local emergency management plan.
I second.
We have a second from Mary. Discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's one
Thank you,
signature
Scott.
for you at the end of the meeting.
I'm ready for it. Thanks a lot, Scott. We really appreciate that. All right, so next we have an introduction to the assessor. I believe Joe is going to join us.
There he is.
All right.
Joe, do you want me to share my screen?
Yeah.
Give me a second to pull up.
Yeah, go ahead. If you, I sent it to you, right? So you got it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Don't jinx.
It's like the Q word. You don't say the Q word.
So this is just a presentation, correct?
It's just a presentation. Yeah, this is just kind of what I do. I think I'm probably the most elusive department in the whole town. So I just give you guys what I do, what I cover, and how it's all kind of breaks down.
Great.
It would be interesting, Tracy, if we can get a copy of presentations that are not included in the packet. So
What we did is we asked Joe, I think on Wednesday afternoon, if he could do this for you all. And how we managed to squeeze him in is by saying that he could get this done over the weekend and on Monday, because I at about 1:15 walked in and said, hey, Joe, do you think you could participate in the next board meeting? And by the way, your packet is due on Friday. My PowerPoint keeps shutting down, so give me a second here.
I understand. Just if after the presentation, what I'm saying is,
Oh,
if after the presentations are over, like the Quechee, the Quechee Friends of Quechee, be nice to get that presentation emailed to us, and it would be nice to have Joe's presentation. I'm not asking for it beforehand because I know sometimes that's not possible, but this information will be nice for us to store for future reference.
Joe was a trooper to take my my knock on his door and say, hey.
Hey, it's all right. I'm happy to be here.
All right, there we go. My PowerPoint is now.
All right, cool.
There we go. And I'm gonna.
This is just kind of like what I do, how we handle things, some of the procedures and statutory requirements that we're up against when we're doing assessment. And when we say assessment, it's basically just the appraisal of all, it's the appraisal and inventory of all property in Hartford. We handle that. We handle the inventory, physical characteristics and things of that nature. So yeah, we'll jump into it. What I do as the assessor, and when I say the assessor, I also have Christina, which is assistant assessor. It's a two-person department. So as the assessor's office, that's the two of us. Maintain the grand list. I don't know if we're probably all aware of the grand list and what it is. And it's basically just an inventory of all taxable and non-taxable property in the town of Hartford. It changes, we keep up with changes. It's probably, I would say at least 80% of what we do is track the changes down. We apply exemptions, do things of that nature. Property grievances, every year, every taxpayer in the town of Hartford and the state of Vermont for that matter is allowed to grieve their values. So they can come to me and say, hey, Joe, I don't like what you have. Let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. Here's what I don't like about it. And that's a statutory requirement. And it's a great thing. It keeps everybody on the up and up there. So we handle those every year annually. Reporting, we have to report a decent amount to the state of Vermont. Okay, we kind of act. I'm an employee of the town of Vermont, but I also act as a pseudo agent for Vermont, for the state of Vermont, because we have to send 411s to them. We do a lot with education, the Ed Fund. They basically kind of tap us for Ed Fund values and things of that nature. So we do a lot of reporting to the state, and we have to follow a lot of state procedures associated with that. So new to me, but I figured it out pretty quickly that we're not just the town, we're also the town plus the state of Vermont. So it works out pretty well. Going back to the grand list itself, these are the situations with the grand list, and these go back to kind of appraisal standards. Just so you all know, I'm an appraiser at heart. I've been doing appraising for over 20 years. And it takes an appraiser to be an assessor. It really does, because that's what we do. April 1st is the day that valuations are established. That varies state to state, but in Vermont, it is April 1st. So as of April 1st, how is your property? Have there been any changes to your property as of April 1st? If so, that needs to be collected and put on the tax roll. That is the big date. Other states are January 1st, so on and so forth, but that needs to be established. That date needs to be established because it creates equity. It creates a stability in the market. So I'm not essentially assessing someone as April 1st and then say, okay, well, this happened December 30th. And as you guys probably know, the market gets crazy. And then all of a sudden the value is increased, and that's just not fair. So we have to establish that date to set those values. It's very important in assessment. And every municipality in the country will have one specific date of valuation, and Vermont is April 1st. 2017 is revaluation. We'll get to that too. That's an important year. As you see in the next bullet point, fair market, that's another very important aspect of what we do. And statutorily, we have to appraise these things as of April 1st as fair market value. The last reassessment in Vermont was April 1st, or excuse me, in Hartford was April 1st, 2017. So basically what that means is that all values set and that are sitting in the grand list right now should reflect 2017 values. It's not fair for me to appraise or assess any property outside of that April 1st, 2017, as you can imagine. I mean, would you want me to come and look at your property now and say the value of your property now versus 2017 and tax you on that? It's just not fair. So it's an equitable situation. Let's see. And let me touch on fair market value real quick, because that's really important. That's a definition that drives not only assessment, it also drives any type of property valuation. When you go to get a loan on your house, or when you go to purchase a house, they're going to ask fair market value. Okay, what that means is basically it means a lot, but to sum it up, it's informed and willing. Is the buyer and the seller informed and willing to carry out the transaction? And it becomes very important, actually, because I can give a piece of property or sell a piece of property to my brother or whatever. That's not fair market. That doesn't mean anything. That's just something outside of that. Fair market is was it a legitimate transaction? Was it arm's length is what we like to call it. And that's very important because that plays back into common level appraisal and some of the other things that we'll talk about in just a little bit. Physical characteristics. This is a big one. I don't really like the term, but the common assessment term are called pickups. Is where someone builds a deck on a house or someone puts an addition on a home. We go out annually and look at those and inspect those and tax them. It's not fair for someone to have an addition on their home and not be taxed when everyone else in the neighborhood is taxed on their physical characteristics of their home. So we do that annually. We typically do it twice a year, but it can be done at any point in time. Again, it says of April 1st. If that deck isn't on your house as of April 1st, you're not going to be taxed for it. It's got that is the date. So your property, the physical characteristics of property, how they're sitting on April 1st is what you will be taxed on. And what will be assessed. Property transfers are important as well. We analyze these. This is really important because this is a report that goes back to the state to establish the common level of appraisal and some other things like coefficient of dispersion, which we'll talk about, which can trigger a revaluation. Also, this helps with ownership. We collect these transfers and we change ownership of property so we know who to bill, where they're at, and everything else. So that becomes an issue. if we don't have the right taxpayer, how do we know who gets the bill? How do we know who to get in touch with if a certain situation happens with the property? Exemptions. Exemptions are all statutory and they're state driven. There's a handful of them in Vermont. You have like, veterans exemptions, which the town of Hartford has chosen to implement. This is a town by town thing. That one is at least. Current use, so you guys have probably already heard of that. The state gives people breaks for horticulture and agriculture and things of that nature. I say breaks, it's really not quite as simple as that. Public, pious, and charitable, that exemption is out there if you're doing something for the community and it's all inclusive and things of that nature. There is an exemption for that as well. Let's see. Okay, I think that next slide. But that's a lot of what we do with the grand list. The grievance process. I was raised on calling them appeals. That's really what they are, but the state says this is a grievance. So I trip up on that. If I call it appeal, I apologize. The state of Vermont calls it a grievance. Grievance sounds heavy to me. You know what I mean? It sounds appeal sounds a little bit. They first have to come to me. They have to give me basically a written grievance. I'll back up real quick. The burden is going to be on the taxpayer to prove the value is wrong, right? The burden's on the taxpayer to bring me any type of information to say, hey, look, your value is wrong. This is why, right? And that happens. I mean, I'm in charge of 6,500 parcels. I'm going to get things wrong occasionally. And if this is why the process is in place, and I really appreciate this process. They can come to me and they say, hey, Joe, this is wrong. I say, okay, totally, you're right. Let's figure this out. Or they say, hey, this is wrong. I think it should be lower. And I'm like, no, not really. When that happens, that process goes to the BCA, the Board of Civil Authority. That's through the clerk's office. It gets set up through Lisa, and it's a process as to where it's heard. I think you all are a part of that as well. So you guys get to hear those, get to hear my side of it, you hear the taxpayer side of it, and the decision gets made. Again, it's up to the taxpayer to provide evidence of a false assessment or something that is not quite right there. If the taxpayer or the town, for that matter, if I disagree with what the BCA says, or if the taxpayer disagrees with what the BCA says, this could get elevated to the Superior Court or the Vermont Property Valuation and Review. Typically, the PVR will handle value-related questions or value-related disputes, and the courts handles statutory stuff like, was this exemption correctly applied? Was this statute applied correctly? There's really no rule saying who gets what, but that's typically how it works out. And beyond that, if you go through that whole entire process, and if that doesn't work out, no one can agree on anything, the last step is the Supreme Court, and it'll go to a Supreme Court. And these court decisions are juryless. They're up to the judge. The judge handles it all. There is no jury there. All right. Reporting is pretty straightforward. I report a lot to the state. We qualify sales, we do things of that nature. We give them our 411, which is the basically grand list, how they want to see it for ed fund, things of that nature. They have specific classifications of property for CLA reports and things of that nature. So we work real close with the state. They're in charge of current use. We just dictate the value associated with current use, if that makes sense. They decide if people are in and out. We just tell them how much value is in and out. Interdepartmental reports, I do a good bit with Lori, with TIF and all that stuff. I'm involved with that because I handle the values, and it's very value heavy. And the CLA, I don't think we're going to touch on that. We'll touch on that in just a little bit, but Common level of appraisal is something that's this legitimate marker for how far out of whack we are, basically, with our canvas system and our value models. And that's a report that we do. We don't do that report. The state does that report, but we give them the information to generate that report. You guys have all seen that or heard that term. Ed Fund uses it. We use it. Everybody uses CLA. And that's an equalization rate that we'll talk about. Okay, revaluation, like we said earlier, right now the town's sitting at April 1st, 2017. So all values that are taxable should reflect an April 1st, 2017 value. No matter if I pick up an addition on your house today, that addition's value will reflect the 2017 value. Okay. There are certain things in place. Typically, they're state prescribed and other things where you value the property as of 2022, but then you apply a rate, a common level of appraisal rate. So I value the property now as $200,000, but that value shouldn't be taxable. It needs to be 2017. So the common level of appraisal is a neutralization, basically. So right now we're sitting at 0.86. They say you value the property at 200,000. You need to drop that value by 14% in order to make it 2017 numbers. And we do that, of course. Again, this is all about getting everybody on the same page and getting everybody taxed in a very equitable situation. Again, like I want to stress that my main job really is just to be fair. And that's kind of how I look at it.
So Joe, if we're at 0.85 at some point, does that trigger the
0.85 triggers it? Yeah,
Okay.
Next slide, we're right here right now. Perfect.
Oh, man, we couldn't have done that better if I had fed Mike the question at slide 6.
Yeah. So PVR, and North Carolina, where I come from, the Department of Revenue is, they're not just, they're our regulatory agency in NC. Here, the PVR is a guidance, statutory guidance. They can't regulate. They can fine you statutorily if you don't do what they say, but they're not like the hammer. But what they can do is they can force us to reval with penalty of $100,000 fine per year. If our CLA falls below 0.85 or greater than 1.15. So that means a 15% deviation for what would be considered fair market value. All right, so if our system's out of whack, 15% high or low, they can come in and say, you guys got to fix it for good reason, and they should, and we all should be aware of that. And when I say sales ratios, because that's the sales ratio is what it is. The sales ratio is basically your assessed value divided by the sales price. Okay, so if your assessed value is 200,000 and it sells for 100,000, you're 100% overvalued, basically is what it's saying. So when that CLA deviates beyond that, PVR will send us a very kind letter and say, hey, you guys got to fix this. They give us a year to put a plan together. And then we implement the plan. So the other triggers for a reval, as you guys can see, are coefficient of dispersion. And I can explain that real quick. I think it came up one board meeting. Was it cash on delivery? No, not quite. Not quite. The COD measures horizontal equity. So if you think about it, you got horizontal equity between types of real estate, real property. You got vertical equity. The vertical equity goes in value. So is the $50,000 property getting the same equity as the $5 million property? That would be measured in a COV, coefficient of variation, which is not used by the state of Vermont. Just the COD is used by the state of Vermont, which measures that horizontal equity. So when I say horizontal, I mean like single family homes have a ratio of, this is just, I'm making this up. So single family homes have a ratio of 1.15 and retail has a ratio of 0.45. Here's the problem there is that we're assessing residential real estate, single family homes too high when we're giving, or yeah, we're assessing them too high when we're giving the other one a break. So they'll call you on that when that gets outside of 20%, and they'll say, hey, the equity's not there. Not that your ratios are bad, but your across the board equity isn't there. So we're going to force you to reval too. It's a relatively complicated equation where it uses standard deviations of the ratio to dictate the coefficient of dispersion. It is an important measure in assessment, though. It's the second heaviest behind the ratio itself.
Can I ask
Oh yeah.
Hey Joe, it's Rocket. I'm on Zoom. I was just wondering, that COD that you said, is that a sort of a weighted measure between different classifications of buildings when you say retail versus residential? Is that how it's
yeah, it's not necessarily weighted. I can, if you want me to, I could probably send you the actual equation behind it and you can take a look at it. It just measures, it's kind of a standard deviation difference between the property types, depending on how you classify the property types. It's a little complicated. It's not too bad though. But it's not necessarily weight. They don't put weight on specific properties, if that's what you're asking.
I see. Yeah, and I don't mean to take the time here during your presentation to ask you that. I guess I just didn't, that went completely over my head. So yeah, if you're willing to send a document about how it's calculated, I would love to learn.
Yeah, definitely. Again, it's just statistics and math, but it makes sense and it works. I definitely appreciate it.
Joe, is it more likely that the CLA difference is what's going to trigger a town to reevaluate?
Yeah, that's the one. That's the killer, especially in the markets that we're in right now. It's just the volatility in the markets. You'll see through the sales ratio or the CLA studies.
Okay.
The CODs typically you'll see, and we're seeing some pretty heavy coefficient dispersions right now, just because of the what's happened between the residential market now and the commercial market. You're losing retail, you're losing some of the office space, and commercial values are dipping when residential is just crazy.
Yeah.
So that's when you see the COD start to creep. I would say rarely a COD triggers a reval. I think it's probably 90% CLA.
Okay.
You got one more thing on that last slide. You guys too, like another way, if even if the CLA remains the same and the COD remains the same, the select board can trigger a revaluation as well. If you guys decided that was what we wanted to do, we could do that. I look at that happening if it's a very neutral market. So we've had a neutral market for the last 6, 7, 8 years, and it's all been playing within those boundaries. At one point, you're going to have to say, guys, it's been 10 years since we did a revaluation. We really need to do one. And I think that's when the select board would probably want to trigger that type of thing. I think the city of Burlington went, it was a long time because they played within those boundaries, and it'll hurt because all of a sudden your values will change drastically when people don't even really expect it. So the time frame is a thing here in a lot of states. In the US have statutory year limits on revals. Some of them, I think New Hampshire's 6. Vermont does not have a state statutory mandate. Yeah, New Hampshire 6 years, I think. Maybe 8 years. I can't remember, but anyways, it's not a bad thing, honestly. It brings everything back down to an even playing field. That's really what you want, and that's the COD and the CLA. What we got here at town right now. My guess on this is that we will be below 0.85 next year, and they will force us to reval in 2024. That's my projections, at least, unless something crazy happens and a bubble pops and things go. I don't even want to say that. Sorry, I'll take it back. Yeah. Revaluation procedures. During a reval, you'll see me in flashes of streaks of light. I won't really appear in one room at any given time. I'll just be kind of like everywhere at once. It'll be a crazy time. What we'll have to do is we have to go analyze every property. We have to statutorily, we have to look at every property. We have to make sure the physical characteristics are right. Then we have to get into our Canvas system, which is computer assisted mass appraisal, which is an incredibly complicated equation, basically, that takes property variables and assigns them weight, assigns them a percentage. We have to look at every aspect of that. One thing is, like subcategories that we have, like what is a deck worth per square foot? We got to look at that again. It's not the same as it was in 2017. So we have to take a look at, price per square foot of a luxury home. Now, all that stuff we have to dig into, and we have to figure out the current market of that. So it takes a long time, and it's pretty detailed. And also, once we do that, there'll be a line out my office door with people wanting to appeal because they won't understand the value change. It's not that it's right or wrong, or it's not that it's wrong. It would hopefully be right. But it's that a lot of people just don't understand, like, what, wait a second, and in these revaluation situations, what happens is a lot of people say, hey, you increase the value of my property by $100,000, I'm gonna have to pay more taxes. And that is not the case. The case is it affects the rate. So all of a sudden your inventory went from 1.5 billion to 2 billion. Guess what's going to happen? The town's not going to need any more money, or maybe a 2%, 3%, 4%, whatever percent increase. But your rate's going to drop because the need for that tax revenue is going to remain the same, but the revenue, the base is going to increase. So people think that that's going to trigger an actual tax increase. And it's not necessarily going to do that. So it's a false conception. But nonetheless, when people see their values go up $100,000, they're going to question it. And I also wanted to bring this in there real quick, just so you guys know, this isn't, in Lebanon uses it. And there's some other cities that use aerial photography and other tools. These are incredibly important to assessment, and people haven't really caught on. I think it's because of smaller towns have tighter budgets, and this isn't a cheap thing. And I've reached out to other towns around us to see and talk to them a little bit about, hey guys, let's try to think about this and let's all get on the same page. If we can get more people involved, it'll be cheaper and we'll all benefit from this. But as you see this picture, and this is what this does, this brings a whole new dimension to assessment. Okay, this basically, especially in the state of Vermont, when your permitting is limited, you're not going to get someone to go look at your electrical, look at your plumbing, look at everything. You have your basic zoning, your basic permitting. This is going to allow me to capture a lot more. This is going to allow my information to be 100% correct. I'll say 100%. More correct than anything. I mean, if you look at this one picture, this tells me a lot. This tells me there potentially could be 2 fireplaces in a home that could affect the value. This shows me there's a swimming pool in the back that no one might have known about. This shows me that there's maybe a lean-to beside that garage that we don't have captured. All kinds of things. And these images, and I've mentioned this to Scott and Bobby a little bit, but as we go in here, these images also can play with fire and police as well, because all of a sudden you have this image, you know exactly which door to get in and all that stuff. So this is something that would be beneficial down the road for us, and hopefully this could be implemented before revaluation. And I would be more than happy to set up at some point before we start implementing this a presentation to get some of these people in here to show you guys what these images can do. They also come in and do, I feel like I'm like, I work for EqualView. I don't. I just know what they can do. They'll fly, like there was a couple hurricanes down south, and I was talking to our rep at that point, and he was on the phone with somebody. He was like, "Oh, we're trying to get these planes in the air like today to capture the damage for the hurricanes." That's what they do. They don't just work for municipalities; they work for everybody, which is cool.
You don't use drones?
No, drones don't capture enough.
Okay.
They don't capture the area we need. Now we can use drones, and some people do use drones in really urban areas to get specific building dimensions and conditions. I mean, we really don't need it here. But like New York City, I guarantee you the assessors probably have drone teams that go out and take a look at some of the buildings.
So do you just drive by properties? I mean, are you out in the field?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
basically, you
that's
just-
what I do.
You just visually take a look at them?
That's what we have to do, you know, unfortunately. And stuff like this, I mean.
What happens if you get like a long private driveway? Can you see it or not?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So
No,
what happens?
I love that y'all are asking these questions, because these are the questions
Yeah,
most of the
great.
staff ask Joe on a daily basis.
Well, I mean, I let Bobby and everybody else in the town know where I'm gonna be.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, it's not, we're not people's favorites.
Yeah, but are you even allowed? I guess the question is.
Yeah,
to
so
broach it.
we're allowed.
You're
We're
allowed to go
to
look
trespass. If
around.
they don't want us on the property, if they don't want us in their house, they're not gonna have us in our house.
Yeah, sure.
They'll tell me, if they tell me to turn around and leave, I'm gonna turn around and leave it because it's their property and, you know, I'm technically on their property.
Yeah.
So it becomes a very awkward and weird situation, if you can
Yeah,
imagine. I'm a fee appraiser as well. So I'm a certified appraiser in Vermont, North Carolina, to work with banks for collateral issues. That gets tricky. If you remember in 2007 and 8, we would have to go do foreclosures a ton when the market folded. I mean, people would not want us to be there and be armed. You know what I mean? So it becomes those situations where it's not necessarily dangerous if you can handle the situation, but it can escalate.
Gotcha.
Okay, the importance of assessment. This is why we're here. We got about 80% of the overall town revenue that we control. I don't say control. I said we're in charge of reporting and dictating the value. And that's a lot. You know, that's a chunk. That's basically what happens is once you start setting rates, it gets down to the tax base, and then you figure out what rate you need to assess on the tax base. And my main job is to keep that tax base honest and equitable for everybody in the town ad valorem. Okay, that's a huge term in assessment that's pertaining to value. So the assumption there is if you have $1 million home, you can afford a little more taxes than someone with a $50,000 home. And that's really my main job is to say your home is worth 50,000, your home is worth $1 million, and you're assessed on that value. You're taxed on that value. So yeah, I mean, 80% is about what we hold. Everything else, like what Scott was just talking about, the revenues that they bring in through some of these services, or outside of that 80%, they come in non-tax revenues. And some of the unassigned fund stuff that you associate with, that all gets taken off, and then the tax base is relied on to carry the rest of the burden. And we work to set that rate. Tracy, now at some point we'll sit down and say, hey, what do we got? You know, as far as the grand list goes, and what we have as far as, you know, you guys were here for the last tax rates. So.
Yeah, we'll usually have a special meeting in July as the state comes down, because we're doing our own work and we're waiting on the state, and there's usually this stop and start as Joe's waiting, sitting there hitting refresh on his email, waiting for the state's final report to come down.
Yeah, the state gives us their ed fund rate. We don't have anything to do with their ed fund rate. I mean, like, that's totally up to them. That's their math. It's not ours. And that's heavy. I mean, if you can see last year, we were like, the municipal we were at like 1%, and they were at 1.7%. So I mean, they're heavier than we are, and we just wait for their rate. So once we get their rate, we figure stuff out.
Sorry, next slide.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And what I want to show you guys now is a quick current where we're at right now. And I want to throw out a gigantic disclaimer that this is a work in progress right now, because what's happened, the steps involved is the values are set April 1st. We do an abstract grand list. When I say abstract, we do it basically the first run of the grand list in June. And then people get value change notices, and that opens up the appeal window. So people can say, hey, I'm appealing, and typically value is lost on the grand list at that point. So all these values are current. They're not, I haven't heard appeals yet. I haven't done anything like that. So I would say typically they're going to be higher. They're going to be a little high right now. So I just want to throw out there. I'll show you what's going on right now, but these numbers will change, possibly millions. So this is where we're at. It's kind of hard to see. Going from left to right, that's residential, property type, commercial, condominium, utilities, vacant land, manufacturing, farm, and industrial. So as you can see, we're very heavy residential, as you could have possibly imagined. Right now, the overall appraised value in the ground lease is sitting at 1.5 billion or so. That's a percentage breakdown. You can't really see it right there. Blue is residential, dark blue is commercial. And, you know, one thing I want to say, and we were kind of talking about this a little bit earlier, is that the town's budget is what it is. You know, like there's things there in when we shift, I take this, I have to be very careful because I have to spread that burden out equally, right? So if there's a $2 million switch somewhere, $3 million switch somewhere, someone appeals and we lose, you know, 3 million, or there's something going on that goes, take 3 million out of the commercial pot. That's going to be spread to residential property. We're going to have to pick that up. You know what I mean? So like you and I, like all of us are going to have to do that. So that's why it's really important for everything to be equitable, for the real estate values to be right, for the commercial values to be right. Because as soon as there's an imbalance, there's somebody technically is paying more than they should. And that's really not what needs to happen. So again, my job is to be fair, and what I wanted to show you guys here is kind of the percentage of burden that these types of properties have. And when you shift that burden, someone has to pick it up. So if we lose $3 million residentially because of a development falls through or something like that, it's going to have to be picked up somewhere else. It's not going to go anywhere. So transfers, this is important too. So, you know, it's really interesting seeing Scott's presentation and his number of responses and whatnot, and the number of property transfers almost mimics that. That just gives us an idea of the popularity of Hartford and Vermont in general, what's going on. The light blue is the total transfers. The dark blue are what I would consider arm's length transactions. Those are the ones we're going to use to qualify sales, to set the CLA. Those are the ones that we're going to use to create our revaluation models, right? Because we have to use those arm's length transactions to see what the market really is. And once we decide what the market really is, then we can change our model.
So Joe, are the light blue like you inherit a property or someone transfers it to you as a gift or something, as opposed to like a real estate transaction between two parties?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Like if you sell a piece of property to your brother, it's just not,
Yeah.
you know, or you don't necessarily have to sell it to your brother. You might buy a piece of property, and in that sale, you say, well, I'll throw in my 57 Chevy with it too. So you know what I mean? Like that's not legitimate at that point because you can't pin down that value.
Gotcha.
And this is probably the most telling of all the slides of where we're at. That's the median sales price in light blue, and that's the median appraised value in our Canvas system currently. And the dark blue or purple have problems with colors. You see the gap, and the gap's a problem. The gap's a problem. You see, we revalued in 17. It was pretty good and tight. It went down a little bit going into 19, started to come back up, and then, I mean, you know what? I mean, as an appraiser, I'll just be really honest with you. When COVID started coming on, I guessed against it. I was like, it's going to decrease. Everybody's going to stay put. Everybody's going to stay in place. I never would have guessed what happened, but it happened. It happened hard. Yeah. So as you guys all know, the supply right now in Vermont is on the bottom and the demand is on the ceiling. So that gap right there that you see is my enemy. And revaluation typically fixes it, but you know, it is what it is.
That gap to me says we have that many people moving up here from Massachusetts and Connecticut trying to escape COVID, and they came up here and live. That's what that says to me.
Well, you're right. A lot of that is going on right now. So a lot of cash buyers, and it's a lot of really what it is too is a lot of people redefining how they work. You know, a lot of people all of a sudden are not going to in-office, they're going to remote, and they're saying, well, man, I can move to Manchester and still, I can move to Hartford and still do my job, even though I'm working out of New York City. You've seen a lot of that, and you've seen a lot of cash changing hands.
Hey, Joe, I have a question about this slide.
Yeah.
I was wondering if, well, I guess I have a couple questions about this and sort of that, whatever you call it, 0.86 threshold.
Yep.
Is it CPL, something like that?
Common
Yeah.
level of appraisal, CLA.
CLA, right. So this one first with the median sales price increasing vastly faster than median appraised value. Firstly, I'm wondering firstly, the median appraised value, if everything's based off of 2017 as the last reappraisal, like what is that just, how does that bottom line change?
That'll never be flatlined per se. You know, the appraised value never is really flatlined. So we do have those like, pickups. We'll have that. What that increase is showing is the growth that has happened. It's not necessarily a value increase. It's just the growth that has happened. So people are putting additions on their property and things of that nature, and their value goes from 250,000, 275,000 because of that accessory unit that they put in the backyard or something like that. Those values are still based on 2017. It's just an indication of a little bit of value growth in property.
I see. Yeah, I just the y-axis there. It's not really. It's like really marginal, under 10%, right? Maybe under 5%. But then the other question is that the median sales price skyrocketing like that. It looks like the Nike swoosh.
Yeah.
Do you have any sense? I mean, I know this may not be a fair question to ask because you may not have the data in front of you. But do you have any sense of the median sales price change depending on average sale price? Does that make sense? So like are the more expensive homes increasing in value at a higher rate, sales price at a higher rate versus the lower, or is it pretty even across the board?
I don't, like you said, I don't have that information in front of me, but really it's increased all over the place. I mean, I've seen $3 million homes go, for 500,000 over asking price, and I've seen a $100,000 home go for $50,000 over asking price. I mean, it's pretty spread out, pretty even. I know anything that has the potential to be slightly affordable goes before it even gets on the market. So it's a really, really tricky situation right now. But no, I don't see that much of a change, as far as the high versus low value properties goes, as far as that goes.
Gotcha. And then using this graph still, the CLA would be calculated as the dark blue line divided by the light blue line. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. So that's sort of skyrocketing. And then the CLA, did I hear you, Sarah? Maybe that was from our meeting where it's like a 3-year average or a 5-year average.
Correct. Yeah. The CLA that the state reports and then it gets applied to our numbers is a 3-year running average. So really, like, if you see what you got there, you're probably going to calculate way less than 0.86. But what's happened is they're taking that from 18 and they're also, or from 21, 20, and 19, and they're giving us a CLA based on that.
So if this trend continues, or even if both lines flatline, it's possible that the next CLA is going to be something just insane, right? Because 2019 falls off, and then we're going to have 2020, 2021, and 2022. So it's going to go from like 0.86 to like 7 or 0.6. Something. Does that sound like that's what would happen?
Exactly. Yep. You called it. You nailed it. Once 2019 rolls off, we're going to be in trouble, and that's why I think we're going to have to be forced to do a reassessment in 2024.
Okay. So my last question on this, and I appreciate all your answers.
Oh, yeah.
Super helpful here. So does it make sense for us as a select board then to start considering calling for a reassessment now? So just in preparation of seeing as that's likely to be the case. I mean, it would have to, like, the top blue line would have to completely invert underneath, or something would have to happen, like you said, a crash, in order to keep us under that 0.86, over that 0.86 threshold anyway, right? So does it make sense to be prudent and start thinking about a reassessment?
Not at this point, I don't think, because of the direction of the market. I think the state forcing our hand in this is probably the right move to make. I will say that if there's something finicky going on, if there's a bubble and the bubble pops and we get down the road a ways and it looks like things are kind of out of whack, I will be the first to let you know. And then at that point, I think that discussion needs to be had. But as of right now, as of where we sit, I think we're okay to stay the course and let nature work itself out pretty much as far as that goes.
Even though you say that 2019 is going to roll off, and so the CLA is likely to just crater basically.
Yeah.
So the benefit to us is just like, is it logistical of saying like, okay, well, let's not push the issue a year early, or I'm just sort of, I mean, I'm trying to figure out why we'd want to do that versus just saying like, look, it's highly likely to happen.
Sure.
What can we do to get ahead of the curve here?
Yeah, there's really no way at this point, because even if I were to come to you and say, hey, select board, we're in bad shape, we need to do a reevaluation, you guys say yes, it still would be 2024, not 2023. We have to submit a plan to PVR. They have to accept the plan. It's a process. It's over a year process. So that's why when they force us to revow, they give us a year to get everything together. And we're at the point now where we could not possibly revow in 2023. I thought about that, honestly, come January, when the report comes out. That report didn't come out until the end of December, early January. When it came out, I was like, oh no, we need to revow. And I thought about it, but there was absolutely no possible way we could get that in between then and 2023. So I like the way you're thinking, though. You're thinking up front. You're thinking to prevent these things, but there's a process. And even if we were to call it now, that process would not get in front of what PBR has to say.
Yeah. So Joe, even if we were to delay till 2024, I guess part of my thinking is like, it just depends on how fast the rate of changes of the different brackets of housing, right? But like, obviously, like if we were able to lower the overall property tax rate on all citizens because the average assessed value goes up, then let's say it drops to 0.5% or whatever, by 0.5%. Wouldn't that be? I'm trying to think about this from an equity standpoint, and it's particularly from the standpoint of like, does it benefit the lower and lower middle income families and lower middle income wealth families to have this recessed sooner? Like, does it shift the burden slightly to the people who can frankly afford it more?
It doesn't really. What it does is it shifts the burden to the people who are being undervalued. And that depends on who's being undervalued or not. So essentially what it does is it corrects that inequity associated with it. So it doesn't necessarily help a specific value range of people. I mean, it could, but it technically doesn't. It's more geolocation, it's more neighborhood, it's more other things. Other things are associated with that, and not just actually the value of the property itself, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah, that does. And so I guess it would just depend on us being able to identify which brackets of housing or what types of housing are really more undervalued than others. So that makes sense.
Exactly. And the ones that are undervalued or overvalued are the ones that are going to be drastically changing.
I see. And then as far as like, if we were to wait until the state just mandated it next year because our CLA is way off, would that put us in the position then where the reassessment would then have to wait till 2025? If right now, 2023?
No, the next CLA report that comes out in December this year, I say if, I don't know, who knows. But if that were to trigger a revaluation, it wouldn't be for 2023, it would be for the next year. Now, the state is lenient in that fact as well, because what's happening is, as you know, Vermont has so many small towns, and the assessors or listers or what have you in the small towns don't have the capacity to revalue their own towns. They have to get contract appraisers in to do that, and they're in high demand right now. So the state's given leniency to some of these towns and saying, hey, we want you to reassess in 2024, but if you can't do it, give me a plan and we'll push it out to 25. So 2024 would be the earliest we could do it, but even if we had a plan in place, it's possible we could do it later. I probably wouldn't recommend that if we have everything in place right now.
Okay,
thanks, Joe. Rocket, anything more?
I have another question, but I can wait if there's anyone else. I can't see anyone in the room, so I don't want to hog this whole airtime.
Yeah, you can ask it. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so this is switching gears here, Joe, and we emailed briefly about this, but there's someone obviously downtown White River who feels pretty frustrated about tax assessment, and I'm wondering if that, I was looking at.
I don't know if we
earlier-
should talk about particular
Yeah.
taxpayers. I don't think that's something we should do, at least in this forum with Joe. He's just giving us an informational session, and I don't really
Okay.
want him to opine on anyone who's actually facing an assessment or paying taxes.
Yeah, and we're still working all these values out, so.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I don't mean to, yeah, that's fine. I'll try, I don't know what quite the right forum is to sort of understand it better, because I guess my personal incentive is just to see investment downtown, and investment across the town. So, but I appreciate this presentation. It was really informative. So thank you.
Anything more on your presentation, Joe, or was that?
Oh, no,
was
that's
that
it. I was open
Okay.
before for questions if anybody had any more questions.
Well,
for
this has
me.
been very helpful. I don't know if anyone else has any questions, but yeah, it looks like a reevaluation is in our future.
It's imminent, unfortunately. But it's a good thing. It's a pain, but it's a good thing overall.
And I would just comment that I do think a robust public information campaign around
Absolutely.
it would be really, really important.
I think, we were involved with that in North Carolina before I came here. We did a whole countywide evaluation of 130,000 plus parcels, and it went over very well. And that was due to town hall meetings. It was due to get the word out. It was due to publications. We had numerous publications. We would meet, we would talk, and we get everybody informed. And that's one of the issues, is when people all of a sudden get their reassessment, like, oh man, but if you inform them up front, it just does a world of difference. So I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, that it wasn't certainly, I guess it wasn't intuitive, to me and maybe to other people, that when you reevaluate, when you increase the grand list, that's going to affect the rate, and that may
Right.
not necessarily mean a tax increase, because I think when people look at it and they say, oh my God, my house is worth this much more, immediately the thought is like, oh God, I'm going
Yeah,
to pay a lot.
they think of that 2.7% that was applied last year, and all of a sudden they're $100,000 more, so they're going to have to pay $2,700 more dollars.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the case. Revenue neutral is a term that gets thrown around in assessment. Is when the revenue is neutral and the tax values go up, the rates go down, and it becomes a revenue neutral.
All right, well, thanks so much, Joe.
Absolutely.
All right, take care. All right, our
Thank
next item of business is a proclamation honoring John Clerkin's service to the town. I don't know that we need a motion, but I'm happy to read it into the record if there are no objections. All right. Proclamation and appreciation of service. Whereas John Clerkin has served the town of Hartford as treasurer since 2011 with distinction. And whereas he has been an engaged and committed citizen of Hartford for many years and has served the town in many capacities, including as justice of the peace, member of the select board, and as Hartford representative to the Vermont legislature. And whereas John has decided to resign his position as treasurer and will be greatly missed in that role, now therefore be it resolved by the citizens of the town of Hartford that John Clerkin be given our deepest gratitude and appreciation for years of outstanding service and dedication to the town of Hartford. And furthermore, that this resolution be recorded in the town records dated this 19th day of April, 2022. Okay, again, thank you, John, for all your years of service.
Thank you.
Very, very much appreciated. All right, so we did Joe Major's confirmation as treasurer. The associated item with that was to confirm the line of credit application, which we did last time. So I guess my one question is, do we need Rocket and Lanny also to abstain on that, as we did with the?
Just Lanny, because he was absent. Mike, I'm sorry, Rocket and Dan both signed, and they did vote in that.
Okay, good. Thank you for reminding me of that. Okay, well, this is right. This is just giving Joe Major the authority as town treasurer to execute the loan documents related to the new $5 million line of credit with Mascoma Bank. So I'm happy to have discussion or to accept a motion, entertain a motion. Ally.
Mr. Chair, I'd move that the select board appoint in accordance with authorities granted by 24 VSA 963.
You already did that one.
Oops.
No, I think it's the next one. that we did.
Oh, it's the next one.
Okay.
This one right there. give Joe Major.
Great. All right, backtracking, and Mr. Chair, I move
Yes.
that the select board give town treasurer Joseph Major authority to execute all loan documents related to the new $5 million line of credit effective on or around April 28th, 2022, to that effect on behalf of the town of Hartford, Vermont.
I second.
Mary seconds. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thanks, everybody. All right, our final main item tonight is the proposed charter committee. So this is for the 5th charter committee, charter commission, and I believe there's a kickoff meeting on Wednesday. Maybe Lanny can tell us more about that in a minute. If you see on the actual charge, there's some blank areas for the term of when they need to complete it. My understanding is that if we approve this as is, the charter commission itself could make amendments to the document and bring it back in front of us if they wanted to fill in these dates, or if there are other things that they wanted to address. Is anyone of the same mind as that? Kim?
Did they discuss it?
No, nobody's discussing me. I'd much prefer to have a date.
The idea is, you know, you and the commission, once this brings the charge into effect, could meet, review the charge, and bring it back to us to approve any amendments that you want as a commission.
I don't disagree with you, but I believe that any charge for any committee should have a date, and then.
Do you have a date to propose? I'm just looking for a date so we can get this kicked off.
I was gonna, Lynn Bohite is on and she did just raise her hand.
Okay, let's hear from
I wanna
Lynn.
See if she has any comments.
Please.
Go ahead, Lynn. Is she unmuted? You see her, Lynn Bohite? Thanks.
Okay. We haven't met, we meet tomorrow, as Mike and Lanny said. And we're taking, FX and I, not that we've talked to the committee about this, but took Tracy's suggestion that either he or I be chair, and we've decided we would both be co-chairs. So we've been doing some background work, and one of the questions that we had was, can we do 2 charters, since you're talking about a date? And so there's a legislative rule about you can't vote on an issue twice in a biennium. So I contacted the House clerk today, and her response is that because we're going to make, FX's and my suggestion is that we think about the town meeting issues first and have people vote on them in November. And then we take up the other issues and have them vote on them in March. And that, according to the House clerk, is perfectly fine, since they will be in 2 different bills and several different issues. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Frankly, first to start off, Lynn, you nor FX are authorized to state your chair at this point in time. That is for the committee to choose the chair. You cannot self-appoint yourself as chair or co-chair. Secondly, I would prefer to have this have a term of being like February, and then if something is brought before the select board for November, that can be brought before the select board, and there can be an extension or a continuance brought before it. But if we have one charge that says, say February or January, to have it brought before the board, anything that has to go on the November ballot can still be put on there, and then the board can issue it a continuance. That would be my recommendations for this, not to have 2 charges, because I think that's getting very away from what I would believe the standard of what this committee should be about. I don't know, Kim, you obviously have something to say.
That actually makes sense to me, and I'm
sorry.
curious if it makes sense
Sorry,
to
Mike.
Lynn too. So then I think the question would be, we could fill in these dates if we basically just thought about what date what date would the charter committee need to bring something before the select board in order to be timely enough for the November warning?
Oh, I could do I could do town meeting day 2023 on the fly, but I don't know if I can do November 2022. Lanny, are we talking November 2022?
Yes, it would be November 22. I
I
think
don't
that's,
think, I don't think I can do that. I don't think I could backtrack that on the fly like this. I
To me,
do March now, but I can't do an off cycle.
All right, but we could, I mean, we could say like,
I think we can just put in a date and then
August
the
31st.
commission can come to us if they need a different
Right, I
date
would
or if they have
suggest-
different
I would
things. This
suggest-
will at least let them meet
Yeah,
tomorrow with
okay.
a charge voted on. So I mean, if we want to, I mean, I'm fine with whatever term we want to put in.
I would
for
say
these.
January 31st.
no, if we're gonna do the November, then it needs to be like August 23rd.
But no later means it could be sooner. No later means no later than, but it can be sooner.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
yes,
And we're
so I would
putting it
say,
the November 2023.
no, November
2022.
2022. I personally don't think we're gonna make that timeline.
Okay.
I really
Mr.
don't.
Chair,
There's a lot to do.
Chair, I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm just having a tough time understanding the whole process of this. So is it that they come present to us, we send notes back, then they come again and then bring it to the town to vote? How many steps are involved here?
I don't know. It's my first charter commission, right?
Usually,
Lanny?
Usually the process is that the charter committee gets together and based on the charge that they're given, formulates the respective changes to the charter, to the select board. Then the select board approves it or disapproves it. If it needs to go back, again, it can go back. Generally, that's not done because we have a constant communication with the board. And also at the time the select board approves it, then it goes to the voters. And then if the voters approve it, that goes to the state.
So this to me looks like we want to adopt this so they can start doing their work, but there is flexibility for them to come to us if they need an amendment to the charter. So, you know, so if we choose a date here, it's just a provisional date, you know, maybe they follow the date or not, but if they need something from us to really address their needs, then they'll come back and I assume we would approve that. So if we want just to add a term, fill in these blanks here and say when they should come back to us or when their work ends, and then we could just move it, then they can get started formally, I think.
Right with that.
I've got some dates if you want. Lynn, does that sound reasonable to you?
Yes,
Okay, so what if we use, there's a select board meeting potentially January 23rd, I mean, sorry, January 10, 2023 for the no later than date. So basically,
That will come right around the day that we need to post the warning.
okay, so the previous to that,
To
I mean,
the
we're
meeting
also gonna be right in
before.
the middle of budget and everything, but.
Yeah, printing the ballots.
Yeah, remember that.
Yeah, so I mean, we're looking at,
All
I
right,
think,
Maybe
I
December.
bounce.
I think it's
bounce into
provisional,
November.
you know?
I would-
how about
So-
November 29th? 2022.
I'm fine with that because that gives us, well, how about when we need to bounce it back to the committee though? That's if it is not approved within this board and it needs to be bounced back to
Well,
the
again,
committee.
still, this is no later than.
Okay, so we have, that means the committee has to bring something before this committee, at least for this board, at least a month ahead of time, so they'll have a chance to work on it. So, okay,
Yeah, that
that's.
sounds good.
What about
then
6
I-
months? What about 6 months from today? Or tomorrow, because it's 4/20, so 10/20?
It's a lot to do in this charge.
That's, where are you getting the 6 months?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it seems like we're just kind of selecting a date, but it's like, okay,
Yeah,
well then.
I mean,
6
some of the
months makes
ones-
more sense than November, whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really, I assume this date will probably change if, you know, it's not enough time for them, or if we think it's too long.
11/29, or we could do 11/1.
Let's do let's do the 29th.
When's the board meeting in
11/29
November?
seems logical.
November
considering-
29th,
That's at the board meeting?
2023, that's the
Yeah,
select board
I mean,
meeting.
that's according to our current.
That's fine.
schedule, There is one, yeah.
Yeah, so use
I'm
that
cool
date.
with that.
And then there's another date, submit a brief report to the select board to explain the recommendations no later than, let's see, so the first one, recommendations into a revised charter to present to both the Hartford Select Board and the school board. So this date should be before then, or do we just take this out of the charge? We need to submit a brief report to the select board to explain the recommendations no later than,
Why do we have this in here?
I don't know. This was
it's-
language that was.
It's
left
language that was in there, and that's why I expect some amount of cleanup to this to be done by the commission when they start to meet, you know.
Yeah, I would say take out bullet point number 3.
Or that could be, couldn't that just be the same date
Yeah,
as
you
number
can make
one?
it the
Because
same
they would be
date.
presenting
That's fine.
it
Yeah.
all. Yeah.
All right, let's,
Lynn, does that work for you? So basically, in both those blank date spots for this purpose, we're put in November 29, 2022. And then as the committee meets, if they want to come back and request revisions or a presentation on revisions sooner, they can request it.
Yes, that'll work.
Awesome.
great.
I'm fine with that.
Before we move on, I did want to ask about the chair situation that Lanny and Lynn brought up. Is that for all the other committees? I feel like we, as the board, appointed someone. Is that what's the
I
situation?
think they would choose their own
The board always
officers,
chooses-
and their first meeting's tomorrow, so I would expect that they would formally vote to choose their chair and co-chair and everything like that. Because at this point, we haven't
Does
even
the school
approved their
board need
charge.
to approve this charge?
I don't know if the school board does. They might.
Well, because there's
co-members,
several members
yes.
of the school board.
We can handle our business of it, though. That is true.
I think Lady once said, we can't handle the school board. We can only handle our own business.
Yeah.
So what I can do is I can push this out to the school board and we can see if they respond to us.
I did speak to the chair of the school board, and he basically told me that there were no concerns on the school board side of things to be addressed. So
Yeah, we'll just let them
I
approve
think
it.
we can concentrate on town issues, and if there's anything the school board does want. I mean,
Yeah.
they do have representatives to this committee.
Yeah.
So.
All right, and there's one date at the very top, which I think we can put in the town meeting date of March 7th, which is what, so the first one is the term of this commission shall end upon completion of the charge not later than
Yes.
March 7, 2023.
Yeah.
Yep.
Does that also sound okay, Lynn?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so
Okay.
I'm happy to make this motion. If you want.
Yeah.
And Lanny, no, FX and I have just said there's some things that we ought to think about before the group meets. And we've gone ahead and done them. And obviously we're not electing ourselves chair. That's for the board,
Sounds-
for the group to do.
What it
We're
sounded like.
discussing a willingness to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's.
And you'll have the meeting, I think, tomorrow, right? So you'll be able to
Yeah.
report at our next meeting about how that went, and we'll just discuss.
Just want to make clear the process is understood. So.
Yeah.
So can I basically just? Yeah, move, and do I need to mention the dates or not? We'll just,
Yes,
okay,
they
Yeah,
need
let's
to be
put
read
it
into the minutes.
all right. So, we're ready for that?
I am, yes.
Mr. Chair, I move that the select board approve the charter committee charge with the expectation that the completion of this term of the commission shall end upon completion of the charge not later than March 7th, 2023. And that the process, that charter revision recommendations will be presented to both the Hartford School Board and the Hartford Select Board no later than November 29th, 2022. And that the committee should submit a brief report to the Select Board to explain the recommendations no later than November 29, 2022.
I have a motion, Lynn.
I think the whole thing needs to be read into the minutes, because the whole thing needs to be voted upon. Or else you
Do
can.
we normally
Record,
read-
Or you can have it on record, yes, if you'd like to, as submitted, you can have it as submitted,
Oh,
but
okay. So
but-
friendly amendment, accept the committee charge as
submitted with the addition
With-
of the dates.
Yeah, okay. I think.
Yeah, that would work.
Okay.
Okay, we have a second? Dan, second? Discussion?
I feel more comfortable with that.
Yeah. I get it.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, unanimous. All right, wonderful. Our next order of business is commission reports. I am happy to start with Kim and work our way down if Kim has any.
I did email Lana, this planning commission met last night. And they are still working on, they did a workshop relating to the proposed zoning changes from industrial, commercial to a mixed general residential and commercial up off of Route 5 near Ballardville Drive. They have a lot of discussions around the objectives for the zoning, and they got about 2+ hours into the conversation and decided to have another workshop, which is tentatively scheduled for May 16th.
Okay, Dan?
There'll be an energy commission event on the Saturday, which is the 23rd in Norwich. It's many towns, Thetford, Hartford, Norwich, and maybe a few others, displaying some electric vehicles, how to charge a car. I think probably perhaps some test drives as well. Owners will be there, so it's open for the public, and we encourage everyone to attend. And again, on the tree board, the tree this month is the sugar maple. They're looking for a tree warden and also some more additional board members.
And Mary, do you have anything?
Parks and Rec met on April 7th, and discussion began around the topic of bird species, and they discovered there are about 158 bird species at or near Kilowatt Park as a result of discovering that some birders had complaints that the south gates were still closed from winter. But Scott relayed that there had been liability issues regarding the road at that time. Allison Childs complimented Scott on the 2 to 3 paragraph dedication in the brochure to full and part-time staff. A full and fast presentation by Conservation Commission and Tree Board member John Cotton on the town forest and wildlife management goals of ecosystem functions, recreation, education, and forest lumber concerns followed, focusing on wildlife habitat and how and why of a patch cut. There was a quick review of 2022 department goals and objectives for the town master plan goals, which will be ongoing.
Thank you, Mary. Ellie, do you have anything?
Yep. So Ad hoc Committee on Emergency Shelter, we had a visit from Will Eberly, who is the Field Services Director of Vermont's Agency of Human Services. And he just offered kind of an update and synthesis of how the state's general assistance program kind of shifted during the pandemic, and then how the hotel motel voucher program, which I've mentioned before, will be supported by VRAP funds, which is the Vermont Emergency Rental Assistance Program, and kind of follow more of a transitional housing approach with month-to-month kind of almost like leases, or I think they're technically called like occupancy agreements with folks who are staying in hotels and motels. And then the working group that's working on RV policy had a meeting with our town's zoning administrator just to review and update this ongoing memorandum to be shared at an upcoming working meeting with the Planning Commission. We've already had one of those, and we're moving towards another working session with the Planning Commission, probably, hopefully early May. And then Hartford Committee on Racial Equity and Inclusion. Want to give a shout out and thank you to Ann Reynolds, who has resigned from the committee, and want to thank her for her commitment and contributions to HCORE across the years. So the committee has 2 applications already. We have 2 open spots, but we do already have 2 applications in the pipeline. So the board, hopefully at the next meeting, should see those applications to review those. Some members of HCORE were invited to participate in stakeholder interviews with the IACP, International Association of Chiefs of Police, who are conducting our police chief search process. The committee is kind of doing a revamp of its roadmap, which is this document that outlines its goals, objectives, and progress, which hasn't been updated in a while. So there's some updates to make. And then HCORE might be coming before us in the next couple weeks or meetings to just come back for another quarterly update and ask and maybe receive some updates on diversity, equity, inclusion trainings for boards and department heads, community safety, public safety review, policy and policies, and public information officer.
Thank you, Ellie. Rocket, do you have anything?
Yes, a couple. Hartford Historic Preservation Commission. There was a conversation, presentation by Andrew Winter about the St. Paul's unit, 18-unit apartment. So they're sort of reconsidering demolishing the church and maybe thinking about plans to move the rectory instead. Although the planning commission denied their initial application, they are redesigning the building to better fit the neighborhood and address neighbors' concerns. Vermont Agency of Transportation owns the WRJ Railroad Station, and they are thinking about demolishing the south canopy, which the commission agreed would be a shame. Sister cities, the high school, Hartford High School French students continue their conversations and interactions with their French counterparts, pen pals, social media, video conferencing. So it's all pretty cool. And they voted today on changing the bylaws to expand the committee from 5 to 7, which I assume needs to come back to the select board. But we can figure out that, separately, I guess.
Great. Sounds good. Thank you. Lanny, do you have anything?
I do not. All my stuff is towards the end of the month.
Oh, wonderful. I don't really have anything either. So I will move on to the consent agenda and be happy to take a motion. Dan.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the payroll ending 4/16/2022, approve meeting minutes of 4/5/2022 and 4/7/2022, approve the AP manifest of 4/15/2022 and 4/19/22. Select board meeting dates have already been approved of 5/3/2022, 5/17/22, and 5/31/22.
Okay.
Second.
I got a second. All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. All right. Now I will take a
Move to
meeting.
adjourn.
There we go. All right. All
Hold
those
on,
in
you
favor.
guys, you know better.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Undebatable.
Bring your pens.